Chapter 17. Gwen. Naretha. The lab. Not again, Lex muttered. That was my only warning before I could sense a source of bright light behind my closed lids. Knowing that the visual alarm clock wouldn't turn off until I left the bunk, I groped around for the side of the bed and managed to climb down to the floor. I blinked and opened my eyes just as the radiance of the lights faded to something bearable. This was our third day waking up in this cold lab, and I dreaded every moment of it. The unknown made my stomach quake from the uncertainty. I eyed Yvette and Anna, who were both dressed in their cloth hospital gowns. We had all been sequestered in the room, being forced to relax. That was exactly what the prince told us on day 1. Like anyone could relax in a lab, knowing that they may become nothing more than parts for someone to introduce to a sample. The wall vanished, and an android pushed in a cart with 4 covered dishes. My stomach rebelled, pleading for me not to eat the goop that the prince supplied. But we had no choice. Lex had been sedated for a day after his unkind words. No one wanted to share his fate.
"Breakfast is here," Yvette said in a pitiful tone. "Thank you, Prince Ellerin, for the thoughtful gift."
I couldn't blame Yvette for acting thankful. She was angling to increase the odds of her and her foolish son's survival. I, on the other hand, thought it best to keep quiet. Our captor gave me the impression that he truly despised insincerity. Why lie? I wasn't grateful for the goop, the hospital gowns, my imprisonment, and the horrid waiting period. I sat for 3 days, wondering if I would be injected with drugs or forced to use my power until I dropped. The droid left the room, and the wall appeared again. None of us said a word as Anna handed us each a bowl of green goop that we ate with spoons. The prince was so controlling that each bowl had a name on it. That fact made it obvious that we were probably given different food. I sat on the floor beside my bunk and shoveled the first mouthful of warm mush into my mouth. It tasted like flavorless toothpaste. I chewed and swallowed, waiting a bit before eating more food. Anna joined me, handing me the canteen with my name on it. I took it and smiled at her. It was the size of a water pitcher and would be refilled every day. The water was refreshing, so I quickly took a sip. David's mother sat beside me and studied me with sad eyes.
"I'm sure that Prince Ellerin won't hurt you. You have talents he's fascinated by. If he happens to let you go back to the Peerka state, let David know I love him," she softly told me. Worry filled my gut and I stiffened, wondering why Anna's fear seemed more intense. "Did I miss something while I was asleep?" I asked. Anna nodded. "An hour ago, an android brought me a cuff that I'll have to put on after breakfast." Great. It would seem that relaxation time was over with. "What about Lex and Yvette?" I quietly asked her. "No instructions were given to them," she replied. I felt terrible for Anna, but couldn't do anything to change her fate. "She'll be fine, relatively speaking. They are taking her for an egg extraction," Christian mentally told me. "From what some of the scientists are saying, a few embryos will be helpful for their research." "What kind of research?" I mentally asked Christian. "I'm not sure. I have to be careful, my Gwen. The prince has strong mental abilities. I just read the surface thoughts of his assistants when he isn't around," Christian explained. At least I could breathe a little easier. Not that non-consensual surgery was acceptable. I just knew that no one would hurt Anna. "What do you think will happen to the rest of us?" I asked Christian. "I have to go now, Gwen. Stay vigilant. See if you can get a moment alone," he said. When his presence left my mind, I ached for him to return. Before I could think long on it, the wall vanished again and Prince Ellerin entered, a wide grin on his face. "I'm glad that none of you have been wasting my food," he brightly said, his eyes glowing extra bright. "We are grateful for the food," Yvette said.
Lex rolled his eyes. If only it tasted better, he muttered. The crazy prince let out a regretful sigh. My taste buds were affected by an accident when I was young. I'm afraid I'm not too concerned with how nutritious food is supposed to taste. Perhaps you can enlighten me on some healthy spices I can add to your food. Your health is my main concern, the prince told my foolish half-brother. It was like Lex no longer had a filter. Sure. Can I also enlighten you on fashion? I've been wearing the same clothes for days, Lex complained. I eyed Yvette, whose eyes grew wide with horror. Don't you worry, Yvette. I won't punish you for your son's ungratefulness. Unlike Lord Peark, I believe that the person held responsible should pay. Congratulations, Lex. You earned testing duty, the prince announced. Lex stood, his hands balled into fists. What's the point of playing your game? You're going to kill me anyway. I'd rather die fighting, he said, before foolishly charging the prince. What was the matter with Lex? We were deep in the prince's territory, with no way out. Even if he managed to kill the scientist, how would we leave the lab? Lex didn't even make it 2 feet before his body floated in the air, the same way it had when the prince floated him out of Lord Peark's estate. Let me go! Lex shouted. The prince shook his head. I bought you, Lex. You are my property. When my property misbehaves, I have to punish it. 1 minute, Lex was scowling at the alien. The next, he vanished. Yvette began weeping, her body shaking furiously. The prince rolled his eyes. Hysterical women aren't what I want to deal with. I'll trade you in for another, he declared before Yvette floated away. The prince next eyed the both of us. Anna, put on the cuff I brought you. I regret that neither of you got to finish breakfast due to your disrespectful roommates. We stood and placed our half-eaten food on the cart. The prince nodded and gestured at the exit. We followed obediently, Anna's hand in mine. She was rightfully frightened, and I was resigned. I couldn't escape this hellhole. I just needed to endure it. No, you don't, Christian mentally told me. You can change things if you fight. How? I mentally shouted at him. I'm stuck in Prince Ellerin's lair. Where will I escape to? I'll find a way, Gwen. I'm not sure that you'll actually take it when I point it out. Christian's tone told me that he had little faith in my ability to rebel. I wanted to scream at him for judging me. Damn it, I was playing the game in order to survive. How dare you judge me when you're doing the same thing? I bet you haven't tried to escape my father. I tossed back at Christian. I detected emotional pain coming from him, and was nearly staggered by it. I tried, once. Your father made me pay, Christian said. I wished I could tell Christian that I was worried that Prince Ellerin would make me pay. Wasn't seeing Claire's head leave her body enough carnage for a lifetime? But I didn't, because he was probably haunted by whoever lost their life. I could suddenly feel Christian's grief and loneliness, and those emotions crushed my spirit. I blinked, forcing myself not to allow the tears to fall. Christian, I said, my selfish plea for him to rein his emotions in. Without a word, my mental companion left my mind. This is your stop, Anna, Prince Ellerin said. I released my grip on Anna's hand and focused on my surroundings. Prince Ellerin gestured at a wall to the left, and it vanished to reveal a room with 5 exam tables, 4 of which held women. Anna shakily entered the room, and the wall appeared again. I wanted to throw up when the prince shot me a hungry expression. Gwen, I have a task for you, he announced. Task? I asked. I want to see how obedient you really are. Despite what Christian thought, I was going to be as obedient as a trusted golden retriever. I'd do just about anything to survive. I hated being treated like a puppet, but what could I do? I'm at your service, sir. Prince Ellerin let out a belly laugh that nearly caused chills to give my skin frostbite. I shuddered, knowing that I'd be in for a surprise. Precious Gwen, if you were so obedient, Lady Valera would still be alive, he taunted. I wanted to defend myself, but decided that saying nothing was the best choice. Chapter 18. Gwen. Naratha. The lab. The prince tapped his hand on the wall in front of him, and it vanished. He gestured for me to go first. I hesitantly walked into the room, which reeked of lavender. I normally loved this scent, but it was overkill. A mounted screen covered the entirety of one wall, different sections displaying other labs. I looked at one to see a woman with an oval face and scaly skin sitting in a water tank in one of the labs. Her blue hair was up in a braided crown, and her ocean blue gaze held nothing but sadness. Another screen provided me the view of an honest-to-goodness gold dragon being restrained by massive, thick black chains. "Isn't it beautiful?" Prince Ellerin purred. I was going to be sick. I was positive that the mad scientist would be offended by me throwing up goop all over his floor. The pungent smell of the room wasn't helping matters either. I turned to face the man, concerned by the thoughtful expression on his face. "You aren't pleased?" Oh, crap. How did one answer that question? I'm not sure how you want me to react. "Those creatures are in this lab?" I asked. The prince laughed. "No, precious Gwen. Those are images from labs all over various galaxies," he explained. "And you're going to run experiments on us?" I was no fool. The prince referred to us as specimen. "Not for curiosity's sake, if that's what you're asking. There is a grand plan." "What is it?" The prince smiled. "Chaos. It's only through chaos that I can rise." Rise? What was this monster's endgame? Don't most megalomaniacs like him crave world domination? Ugh, it was like I was trapped in a horrid teen science fiction novel. I was waiting for the men in black to storm this lab. Prince Ellerin adjusted his shades before putting a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Gwen, you may be the solution to a problem we're having," he announced. Me? If this man thought that I would fight to bring about chaos, he was dreaming. "I just want to test something on you, to see how durable your mind is," he admitted. He pulled a vial out of his pocket and handed it to me. The glass was cold, the thick liquid a light shade of pink. It was going to taste more horrible than the goop, I just knew it. I uncapped the mixture, and the horrid scent of skunk smacked me in the face. I instinctively dropped the vial and retched all over the floor. "But you didn't even taste it yet," Prince Ellerin said after my retching subsided. "The smell," I groaned. Moments later, two pale-faced Narathians entered the room and immediately turned green. They must have possessed stronger stomachs than me, because they were able to clean up the mess without puking. After they exited, the prince unfortunately pulled out yet another vial. "Plug your nose." I did what he suggested, and he poured the horrid liquid into my mouth. It tasted like battery acid. I choked it down and breathed deeply after the vial was emptied. "Follow me, Gwen," he ordered. I thought it odd that he was willing to give me his back, but I was too sick to take advantage of the fact. Thankfully, the prince only led me down one hallway. He tapped on the wall, and it opened, the overwhelming scent of unwashed body smacking me in the nose. I seriously wished that this man was able to smell. He whistled as we walked into the room. A Janton stood there dressed in a soiled hospital gown. His eyes were empty. blood staining his knuckles. "My Gwen, you're fighting a man named Derma. He says that he's been there for 6 months. The prince made him drink a liquid that allows his mind to be controlled," Christian mentally warned me. "I'm going to have to leave. The prince will have access to your mind soon." I was about to beg my mental companion not to leave me, but then I blacked out. "Gwen, destroy him. This specimen has outlived his usefulness," the prince ordered. "What?" I tried to fight the command, but my hands rose. Bright light surrounded my hands, and I sent the twin balls of deadly power into the frightened Janton's sternum. His body turned to ash in a matter of seconds. The prince clapped while more bile filled my mouth. No, I just murdered a prisoner. I eyed the prince, who admired the Janton's remains. Moments later, the cleanup crew arrived to clean up the ashes. "Good. Let's see if you're able to kill someone that you have an emotional attachment to," he said. Fear ran through me when another miserable assistant entered the room with Yvette. "She has no womb. I can't do anything with her. Destroy her, Gwen," he ordered. No, I couldn't kill helpless Yvette. I needed to fight through the command. "Come on, body, don't fail me." I tried to command my body not to obey him, but it didn't work. "Gwen, don't!" Yvette cried. "I can't! He drugged me!" I screamed out, my hands glowing again. Yvette's eyes widened with realization. Unlike the beaten-down Janton, she ran for me, her face filled with determination. Her hand flew out and a blow caught me across the face. I groaned and wobbled on my feet. "Fight her, Gwen," the prince ordered. The light in my hands grew impossibly brighter, pain lancing through my skull. I couldn't release this kind of power. I would destroy this entire building. "Run!" I rasped out as I advanced toward a determined-looking Yvette. The lab assistant must have seen trouble, because she booked it, Yvette reaching the door right before my blast was released. It was like the blast didn't even affect me. The blast was redirected, slamming into the prince, who abruptly turned to ash. The light continued moving, carving up the wall beside him, traveling as if it had a mind of its own. The power was no longer under my body's command. I hobbled to the door, wanting to gag at the horrid scent of burning flesh. My ears rang so loudly that I couldn't make out any noises around me. I stepped into the hallway, where Yvette and the lab assistant were. I was happy that I managed to fight sending the blast in her direction, but poor Derma hadn't been so fortunate. "You didn't control the power," Christian mentally told me. "I did. Now keep running."
Chapter 19. Sheena, Neretha's Atmosphere. I, Sheena Smith, was actually doing the walk of shame. Okay, so all Derek and I did was fall asleep together, and it was nice being snuggled against him, but I didn't want to wake him up. Who knew what he would ask me for? I slid out of bed and peered down at his relaxed face. Part of me didn't want to leave, but the other part of me reminded me that his ex-wife was on the same ship, most likely eavesdropping on my thoughts. How could he promise to love someone and let her go so easily? What if I gave in to Derek and he decided I wasn't good enough for him? Did he truly know what he wanted? Those questions destroyed the fuzzy feeling that made my heart relax and left me with clawing uneasiness. I forced myself to leave the room and nearly smacked into Amber. She stood there, her fist in the air, obviously prepared to knock. She rubbed her forehead and let out a breath. "Did you have another vision?" she demanded, her eyes filled with fear. Right. Amber's only concern was Winston. This night was crushing on an alien, which was against the guild's rules. What was she going to do when we made it back to Earth? "Not yet," I said. "Damn it. Winston won't listen to reason. Can't you speak to him?" Amber pleaded. You heard Cordell. We need to go to Janton. Mira appeared beside me, a calculating expression on her face. No point in beating a dead horse. Winston isn't going to allow his parents to suffer for a girl he doesn't know, Mira butted in. I scowled at the soulmate-stealing hussy. Who asked you? I snapped. Yes, it was incredibly rude and childish, but no one ever awarded me the maturity medal. How do you expect me to accept his decision? Winston will be walking to his death. The psycho Janton Emperor wants Winston and Angelo killed, Amber said, her hands lighting up. I'm going with Winston. The poor guy doesn't even know how to throw a proper punch. That's a good plan, Angelo said as he strolled out of his room. He was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, his dark hair damp from what was probably a shower. Maybe I can train the rest of you in self-defense. Us? I'm an oracle, and I took down my share of Janton, I protested. Babe, I could knock you on your butt in 2 seconds, Amber bragged. No kidding. You're a super knight, I argued. Amber rubbed her hands together, as if the lot of us were her art project. Where? Amber wondered. I can teleport you guys to a training gym, Angelo offered. Great idea. Maybe Rose can help with the training, Mira brightly suggested. I swore she only did that because I had a problem with the woman. She's pregnant, I countered, shooting Mira a STFU look. Seriously, I wanted to strangle the alien-stealing witch. Would you stop thinking that? I didn't steal Derek from you. If anything, you stole him from me. He was never yours to begin with. And now, instead of falling for him, I'm constantly wondering if he's only with me because of some damn alien genes. Oh, and by the way, what are you going to tell your compatible, huh? I guarantee he isn't going to be happy that another man married the woman who belongs to him. So I'll think whatever I want, I shouted, my hands beginning to burn. That disgusting, foreign-feeling magic rushed to my hands. This time, my hand glowed a blood red. Like the coward she was, Mira teleported away, the magic disappearing after she left my sight. Can she be my sparring partner? I asked after a minute of Amber and Angelo staring at me. What? Let me guess. Amber, are you disappointed in me? Amber shook her head. Sheena, sometimes you do have an everything is about me problem, but I have to agree with you on this one. Mira did steal Derek from you. But forget about her. What kind of power was that? I shook my head. Don't know. It felt weird to use, I confessed, rubbing my arms. We'll have to ask Celeste when we return to Earth, Amber said. Sounds like a plan. Let's get this training session over with, I said. Angelo nodded and grabbed our arms. Moments later, I felt the uncomfortable stirring feeling, my vision growing blurry before it cleared again. Where in the hell are we? Amber asked, her hands immediately beginning to glow with power. I eyed the white, empty room, puzzled by our whereabouts. Angelo seemed equally as confused. I don't know, he honestly said. Holy hell of fire! You can't be serious! I screeched. Amber shook her head. Not so loud, Sheena. We need to figure out where we are. I glanced down at the black-tiled floor and scrunched my face together. There was a layer of dust on the ground that made me glad that I was wearing shoes. I heard a click and frantically looked for a place to hide. I took Angelo's hand and Amber grabbed the other one. Now would be the perfect time to teleport back to the ship, I hissed. Angelo's face scrunched up, his eyes wide with confusion. It's not working, he whispered to me. That's because I teleported you back here, King Rayon said as he entered the room,
dressed in a pair of blue jeans and a flannel shirt.
You were supposed to send a missive to Derek, I blurted out before I could stop myself. So much for being psychic. I most definitely hadn't seen this coming. The king shot me an annoyed look.
I was going to send a missive to Derek, but then I was compelled by one of my most loyal subjects to do otherwise, he said.
Where's Winston? Amber asked, her hand releasing Angelo's. Her hands began to glow, her face twisted in anger. The king shot Amber a grin.
From what my source told me, you're a talented knight. I have no quarrel with you, he said.
But you have one with me? I squeaked.
King Rayon shot me an annoyed glance. You can't rescue Jade. It will ruin the peace I have with Noretha. If King Relics allowed her capture, then it was for a reason,
the Najorian king said. How is that piece of crap related to Sierra? I will never give up on Jade, I shouted.
You will have to. Angelo's going to the Janton Emperor. That means that you'll have no way of getting back on the ship,
the king pointed out. Why? Who was your spy? I demanded.
Probably Derek. He loves to drink the king's Kool-Aid,
Amber grumbled. The door opened and Winston was ushered in by Nicole. The poor guy had tired eyes, as if sleep had evaded him for years. Amber ran over to him, her arms wrapping around his waist. Seeing that sight made me long to see Derek. He would probably assume that I ran off somewhere. Great. The king frowned, his brows lifting when Amber planted a kiss on Winston's lips. I shrugged, unable to understand what I was seeing. Amber pulled away and glared at the king. You aren't sending my soulmate to Janton. I won't let it happen. You'll have to let me go with him. Winston frantically shook his head.
No, don't send her. Amber will get herself killed,
Winston pleaded with the king. I eyed Angelo, who looked annoyed.
Your source didn't also tell you that Sheena is Derek's soulmate?
Angelo inquired in a sharp tone. King Rayon eyed me with disappointment in his eyes. It reminded me of a bride who was saddled with a mother-in-law who believed that her boy could do better. Was I sophisticated? Hell no! I wasn't Najorian and couldn't teleport. But damn it, I was a prize.
No, I wasn't aware of that,
the king replied. I was hurt that Derek didn't find it necessary to mention me in his report.
Mira was your informant,
Angelo realized. Nicole was the one who nodded. She was to interfere if our people were put in danger, the queen explained. I see, I said. What's going to happen to Derek? King Rayon sighed.
He'll return to his post. You and Amber will stay in our compound, since we don't trust you with the information of our existence. Winston, did you form the bond with Amber?
Rayon inquired.
No, sir,
Winston replied. The king scowled in Angelo's direction.
Angelo, you'll have to go to Janton alone. You know I can't risk a soulmate bonding. I'll just tell Emperor Tulda that Winston died. He only ever wanted you anyway,
King Rayon coldly decided. I couldn't believe how callous the man was. Don't you care about what happens to Angelo? He's one of your people, I cried. Rayon. I refused to think of him as a king. He was nothing more than a worm that wore a crown.
No, not at all. From day one, Paint Boy has been nothing but an embarrassment to the military,
the evil man in front of me replied. I wanted to defend my friend, list his more than incredible attributes, but Nicole held up a hand. Amber, Winston, Sheena, come with me, she said. Her kind demeanor was just pissing me off. Not without Angelo, I replied. Nicole rubbed her face. If you cooperate, we'll release Angelo's family, she bargained. Angelo walked over to me and pulled me into a tight hug.
Thanks, Sheena. I appreciate the fact that you stuck up for me. You're a good friend, he said. The moment he pulled away, I wanted to hit someone. Hard. Instead, I made eye contact with Amber, who was studying the king like she was figuring out what her odds against him were. Considering that he could teleport, I didn't think her odds were high at all. Guys, let's go with the queen, Winston said, his eyes locked on Angelo. I could tell that Winston was tempted to fight for his friend. Fine, I grumbled. I mentally promised myself that we would find a way to fix this problem. Mira would pay the first chance I got. I wouldn't forget what she did to me. The minute we left the room, men and women dressed in black uniforms surrounded us. I tried not to give the guy closest to me the stink eye. 12 guards to protect the queen from us? Sheena, what did Mira write in her report? Amber asked me. I could tell that she was dying to test her strength against these aliens. But all I wanted to do was take a nap. This had been one long, miserable day. She probably mentioned how you took out Janton without breaking a sweat, Winston guessed. Nicole sighed. Follow me. Winston, until I assign a room for you and your mate, you will have to stay in Derek's quarters, the Queen said. Queen Nicole, I don't think that Sheena would want to stay in there, Winston protested. The Queen shot me a glare over her shoulder. Sheena will behave herself. It was obvious that she was no longer willing to play nice. I followed the guards down a well-lit hallway and to a set of freight elevators. Since all of us can teleport, these elevators are the only ones we have in the Gemini compound, Nicole explained when the doors opened. Our entire group was able to fit in the elevator without touching. I was on edge, a sinking feeling plaguing me thanks to Winston's concerned expression. Winston, we are all going to Derek's place, right? Was it the place he shared with Mira? I demanded. A large man beside me chuckled. Shared? Last I checked, Derek and Mira were still living together. He chimed in, and my body burned with anger. I'm going to the place where my soulmate and his wife live, I said, directing all my anger at the stupid soldier. Vince, shut up, a woman in her early 20s snapped. She stepped between Vince and I and shot me a friendly smile. Ignore my cousin. He isn't one to keep up with gossip. They divorced. You don't have to worry about Mira. The woman was nice enough, but nothing she said soothed me. She wrapped a strand of her chestnut hair around her finger. I'm Mandy, by the way, she said. Sheena, I forced out. My compatible and I will be the ones to guard you. Don't you worry. Everything will be fine. Yes, let the twin killer fix this, Vince muttered. Hurt entered Mandy's eyes. There was a story there. My nosy nature was rearing its ugly head. I'd find out what it was, in hopes that it would distract me from the thought of staying in the quarter that my soulmate used to share with his wife. Chapter 20. Sheena. Earth. The Gemini compound. We left the cold elevator and walked down 2 wide hallways that had stacks of supply boxes resting against the walls. The musky smell of the place turned my stomach, but I ignored it in favor of concentrating on what I would do to Mira. Once I saw that backstabbing, no-good, soulmate-stealing hussy, I'd break more than just her nose. I had been so close to seeing Jade again, but she destroyed that hope by being a rat. And what about Angelo?
Now my friend was on his way to Janton, the prisoner of a mad emperor, and I could do nothing to protect him. I wasn't sure who I hated more, King Rayon or that stupid Emperor Tulda. If only I could figure out how the Kigor port was destroyed. That was the answer. I would need to force a vision. But how? And once I had the vision, would the psycho emperor believe me? I blinked in surprise when we were led to a dusty stairway. I let out a sneeze and eyed the stairs with hatred. Your suite is 2 floors up, Mandy explained. The elevator doesn't go that high. Would climbing the stairs count as me getting my cardio in? Amber ran up the stairs, obviously annoyed with the group in general. And Winston just teleported away. That left me with happy Mandy and guards I didn't know. Mandy, take Sheena to her quarters. I'd like to visit my sister, Nicole said. I pressed against the wall so that the queen and the other guards could exit the stairwell. Mandy shot me a grin. Now we can gossip and have fun, she cheered. Was this Brad serious? I was on a mission to save 2 of my friends, so I didn't need to make nice with my jailer. My face obviously showed my annoyance. Sheena, you need to make the best of this situation. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with us. Not if I could help it. But I played nice and nodded, wanting to move along. Let's just get this over with. I glared at the half-open door in the carpeted hallway. I wanted to vomit at the thought of encountering Mira's things there. Mandy shot me a supportive look. It's hard, I know. But just remember, Derek loves you. You have a bond. Love? She wanted me to believe that Derek felt so strongly about me. I was about to force my body into the room when I felt tingles go through me. I turned around and saw Derek standing there, a frown on his face. Where's Angelo? He asked. Why would he bring you here? He didn't, I defended. Mira set us all up. I think she tipped the king off, so he used some kind of summoning method to get Angelo to teleport to this stupid compound. It was a freak accident, really. Angelo was going to teleport us to a gym, then we were sent here. Angelo is on his way to Emperor Tulda, Derek. The longer I rambled, the more furious Derek became. His anger gave me a sense of comfort. At least he hadn't been the one to interrupt our plan. Mira told me that you took off to some spaceport with the others. I had no idea you were here until Rawson sent me a missive, he said. Where's Cordell? I asked. He's flying the ship back to Janton. He needs to check on his wife, Derek explained. Where's Mira? Derek examined the carpet as if he was admiring its plushness. She's here, Derek nervously replied. Mira teleported into the hallway, and my instincts flared to life. I sped for her, my fists raised, burning magic slithering in my veins. She held up a hand, her eyes holding annoyance. Suddenly, liquid splashed me in the face. It was cold and tasted like a garlic clove. I gagged, trying to breathe, but my head grew heavy. My muscles cramped up and my lungs burned. My ears felt like they were filled with cotton balls. I couldn't make out Derek's voice. Then, everything went black. Once again, I was doing the walk of shame. Okay, maybe it wasn't the walk of shame, since Derek was my soulmate, but I didn't think I could face him. I slipped out of the king-sized bed and ignored the fact that a vase of red roses were on the nightstand. They were either for me or something that Mira decorated the room with. Velvet curtains covered one wall, and I was dying to see what it hid. But I was more interested in figuring out what happened. After all, I was wearing a pink silk nightgown that reached my ankles, and there was a pair of slippers by the bed in my size. I walked through the half-opened door and entered a hallway with 3 other doors. The smell of bacon permeated the air,
and my stomach sang out in joy. When was the last time I had food? The hallway led to a spacious living room with a plush couch and love seats as bookends. Horror of horrors, there was no TV in sight, though there was an electric fireplace. Maybe if it was cold, I could turn it on. I headed into the kitchen and spotted Derek's mother at the stove, flipping pancakes. Yum. Amber was at the kitchen table, dressed in a t-shirt and shorts. She stood and ran over to me, her arms pulling me into a hug. I can't believe that hussy used blackout spray on you. You aren't a crazy Najorian, she complained. The hussy is here, Mira said. I pulled away from Amber and turned to face the traitor. Mira's dark hair was up in a ponytail, and she wore a sundress. Her makeup was on point, as if she actually had someone to impress. I didn't betray Angelo. I had no choice. When the king orders something, you do it, Mira snapped. Where's Rose? I asked. On the ship with Cordell. She's carrying a Janton baby. And besides, Angelo wasn't available to teleport her to the compound. Why are you still here? I huffed out. Sadness momentarily overcame Mira, which didn't make me feel bad at all. This is my home. Where else am I supposed to go? She demanded. Well, if Derek expects me to live here with him and his ex-wife, then he's mistaken, I shouted. Derek's mother walked over to me and placed a staying hand on my shoulder. Honey, why don't we get some food in you before you start arguing with Mira? She suggested. I'm not hungry, I lied. Mira sighed. I'm having breakfast with my parents, she declared. Then, thankfully, she teleported away. Amber wrapped an arm around me and led me to the table, singing Ding Dong the Witch is Dead under her breath. I sat and accepted the glass of orange juice that Derek's mother put in front of me. I had a vision of you, I blurted out. The woman shot me a grin. Derek told me. I know that these aren't the best circumstances, but I'm so glad to meet you. I'm Agatha. I shot the woman a smile and couldn't help but wonder if she preferred Mira over me. It's nice to meet you, Agatha, I said. I took a sip of the orange juice and wanted to spit it out. I hated pulp with a passion. Sheena, I want to speak to you before Derek wakes up. Do you mind giving us a second alone, Amber? Agatha inquired. Amber stood, patted me on the back, then left the apartment. She was probably eavesdropping. Agatha's warm expression turned sour in 2 seconds. You are never to try to attack Mira again. I understand that she betrayed you, but your bad behavior reflects upon us. Do you have any idea what the king's inner circle is saying about you? No. And quite frankly, I don't care. I'm angry, confused, and worried about Angelo. And by the way, I hate orange juice with pulp. If this broad was a Mira lover, she wasn't worth anything in my books. She let out a sigh. Until you complete the bond with my son, you aren't going to be reasonable. I'm sorry if I'm not who you preferred for your son, I said, my tone heavy with sarcasm. Sheena, I'm not against you. I'm just trying to tell you that your actions have consequences. Mira is one of the king's spies. What do you think will happen if you kill her? He'd have to make an example out of you. Fine. I won't pull every strand of her hair from her head, I said. Agatha rested her hand on top of mine. Like I said, don't bring embarrassment on our family. If you make us lose favor with the king, there will be consequences. Ugh, who cared about consequences? My only plan was to eat grub and find a way out of this stupid compound. If I could get to Julia, she would have answers about forcing a vision. Chapter 21. Sheena. Earth. The Gemini compound.
Thankfully, Agatha excused herself after an awkward breakfast where Amber kept on scowling at her. I was honestly glad to see the woman go. I didn't like being told what to do. I let out a groan when Mandy teleported in the room. Damn it. I needed to speak to Amber alone, and fast. Wow, I had no idea you hated me that much, Mandy said. It's not that, I assured the overly friendly woman. I just want to speak to Amber alone. That won't happen. The king decided that you and I are too much trouble when we're left alone, Amber explained. Mandy nodded. So you really are my babysitter, I grumbled. The Najorian female plopped down on the kitchen chair beside Amber and rubbed her forehead. Let me guess. You want to figure out how to get out of this compound? Well, it's impossible. No one knows where this compound is. That's by design. King Rayon installed anchors that allow us to teleport here. Hell, I don't even know what state we're in. And don't bother thinking that you can use your phone to find out. If you even open a GPS app, your phone will be scrambled. So, unless you can teleport, you're stuck here, Mandy warned. Great. I was trapped in this compound until Angelo found his way off Janton. How do mates bring their humans home? Amber wondered. Mandy glanced at us with sadness. They don't. The Najorian and their human mates will have to make their way somewhere else. Derek never thought that I would come here, I realized. Mandy shrugged. Probably not, she agreed. There has got to be a way, Amber muttered. Without Angelo, I can't see there being a way, I said. Amber rubbed her forehead. Then her chocolate eyes grew wide. Wait a second. I can't return to my coven, Amber realized. Mandy's sorrowful glance was enough to warn me that Amber's words were true. I can't wait to get my hands on Mira. You heard what Agatha said. We aren't to lay a hand on King Rayon's pet, I mocked. So, what else do you guys want to do? We can go shopping, get massages, or... With what money? I asked, confused. I felt Derek enter the room and stood to face him. He wore slacks, a button-down, and loafers. I quickly fixed his tie for him, a kiss on the cheek my reward. My insides felt like a hot spring, his lips a magnet for my eyes. I stared at them, craving the feel of them against mine. I bought a change of clothes for you, Derek said. I laid them out on the bed. I was gung-ho about the leaving our living quarters plan. We needed to figure out if there was another way out of the compound. Derek shook his head. Damn it. He could read my thoughts. Come with me, sweetheart. I took his arm and he led me to the bedroom. He closed the door and eyed me. What is your plan so far? Derek mentally asked me. I wanted to scream upon hearing his voice in my mind. But before I could complain, his luscious lips captured mine in a kiss. I immediately wrapped my arms around his neck, our lips moving gently against each other's. Sheena, your plan. I need to have a vision, I thought back at him. His hands held my waist, the hot spring in my stomach getting warmer by the second. I wanted to add tongue to our kiss, but Derek decided to move his lips down to the side of my neck. I let out a gasp, my heartbeat pounding. I can communicate with Angelo. You need to have a vision of the castle. We need all the intel we can get, Derek mentally said, his lips sucking on my skin. Okay, I said. The door was flung open and Derek pulled away from me, his expression growing cold. Oh, I wanted to check on the both of you, Mandy said, her cheeks going red. What are you, the chastity police? I told you to leave them alone, Amber chastised, shoving her way past Mandy. Mira gave me the impression that Sheena was fighting the bond, Mandy blurted out. She covered her mouth, horrified. It's more that I don't think Derek is over Mira. They just got a divorce yesterday, I said.
It wasn't yesterday, Sheena. Mira and I have been over for a long time.
It might as well have been yesterday, I quipped. Great. We have shopping, followed by a spa appointment, then lunch, and...
Let her change, Mandy, Derek said.
Mandy nodded and practically ran out of the room. Amber closed the door and eyed us. Well, Amber demanded. I need to force a vision, I said. Then the spa is what you need, Amber brightly responded. She grabbed Derek's arm and dragged him from the room. 15 minutes later, I stripped down to my underwear and hopped onto the massage table. Soft, soothing music played, but it did nothing to dispel my anger. I was trapped in the compound unless I could pass useful information on to Angelo. No pressure. The door opened and a tired-looking woman with long, jet-black hair and kind eyes entered. She smiled when she saw me. Hi, Sheena. I'm Lucy Diger, Angelo's aunt, she greeted, and I immediately liked her. I'm sorry I couldn't save him, I apologized, a tear dripping down my face. She shook her head. You tried, honey. That's all that mattered. You signed up for a deep tissue massage, correct? Yes, I said. Let's get to it then. I turned onto my back and felt Lucy's gentle hands on my neck. She worked at my knots, the stress slowly ebbing away. My eyes slid closed and I focused on the feeling of her hands working out the kinks in my exhausted body. I enjoyed the eucalyptus scent of the massage oil she used. It didn't take long until I was shoved into a vision. The room was wide, with high ceilings and walls made of stone. The floor was covered with thick, red fur. The single occupant wore a furry pair of pants and a tunic top with fur trim. His black hair hung in a single braid down his back. His facial hair was plentiful, giving him a wilderness survivalist look. He eyed a backpack sitting in the corner of the room. The door opened and Princess Shala entered, wearing a pair of tight pants and a loose silk top. She eyed the man with annoyance. No matter how your genetic material is altered, we can't create offspring, Prince Zamire. Why is that? The prince blinked, surprised by her question. Princess Shala, I'm no geneticist, he said in a grumpy tone. You still mad that your little whore is dead? According to the villagers, she was nowhere in sight the next day. I bet the drow ghoul ate her in her sleep. That witch was incompetent. The prince looked bored by the conversation. And why are you dressed like that? It isn't like you're going hunting. I like to be prepared, the prince said. He let out a grimace, grabbed the backpack, and teleported away. Prince Zamire was now standing over a figure. He eyed the woman on the ground with longing. He placed the backpack on the snowy ground beside her, which must have startled her awake. She shoved the blanket away from her face and sat up. That's when I saw Jade, sitting in the snow, dressed in a linen robe. Her dark hair was tangled, and she looked as if she hadn't showered in days. Blood caked her hands, and her lips were chapped from the cold. Zamire? She sleepily asked. Then she shook her head. Damn, I was supposed to sneak into the village and steal supplies. Zamire scowled at Jade. What happened to you staying out of trouble? He hissed. What happened to you staying to help me fight? Why do you keep on disappearing? Jade got to her feet, her eyes red from fatigue. I asked you a question first. Why did you think it was a good idea to steal from a Jantan village? He challenged. Jade shrugged. I don't know, she said. My only goal this far is getting to the castle, grabbing you, and having you fly out of here. Zamire shot Jade a frustrated expression. Every time I try to teleport, it doesn't work. And yet you're here in front of me. Why? Zamire shook his head. Jade, you aren't asking the right questions.
We need to figure out why I keep on teleporting back to the castle against my will.
Jade nodded.
Do you have any idea what this mark means?
Jade held up her wrist, which showed a tattoo that included a sword that had a circle on one end and a spool of yarn on the other. The prince shook his head.
No, I've never seen that before. Perhaps it's a gift from your human side? Maybe.
Is Princess Shala treating you okay? Jade looked at the prince with concerned eyes.
I imagine that she's treating me better than she treated you, the prince replied.
Why can't you just answer my question?
Because I don't answer pointless questions, the prince replied.
His response pissed Jade off. I was suddenly in my own body again, and my stress had just doubled.
Chapter 22. Jade. Janton. Destination unknown. I stared at Zamire, trying not to react to his know-it-all manner.
Maybe you want to go back to Shala.
On some level, you probably have feelings for her, I spat out. Jealousy twisted my gut at the thought that Zamire had developed Stockholm Syndrome and was now cozy with his kidnapper. His dark eyes flared with annoyance.
You are one headstrong, clueless princess that thinks she's got everything figured out, he hissed between clenched teeth. And you are one self-righteous...
Zamire yanked me to him and his warm lips pressed to mine, his clean scent making me realize how rank I smelled. He didn't seem to mind. Zamire's hands pressed against my lower back, his tongue controlling the dance that mine made with his. I wrapped my arms around him, craving closeness to him. Our moment was interrupted by a booming trumpet. Zamire pulled away from me, his usual annoyed expression on his face. I turned to face the sound, expecting Princess Shala to be standing there, emitting the horrid sound. But she was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a giant with long, red, intricately braided hair stood there. Zamire eyed the man with dread. That's Emperor Tulda. Now he knows you're alive. Princess Shala will probably be sending more Draugul after him. I eyed the giant, whose eyes were clouded by a white film. Are his eyes always like that? I whispered to Zamire. He rolled his eyes and attempted to push through my barrier. Jade, let me out. I can bargain with him, Zamire insisted. But I didn't listen to him. Something about the Emperor seemed off. I knew better than to go against my instincts, since the last time I did, Lord Peric kidnapped me. The trumpet abruptly stopped, and Janton began climbing out of the gorge, using the stairs that were carved into its sides. When the first man appeared, I noticed that his eyes were also milky white. Jade, let me out, Zamire ordered.
Look at their eyes, Zamire, I hissed.
Zamire frowned when another man joined the Emperor, his eyes the same as the other two men. The Emperor gestured at one of the men, and he charged us, his body bouncing off my barrier.
Oh, crap,
I hissed when the Janton continuously tossed himself against the barrier as if it would shatter. Forget them. The Draugul will finish them off soon enough. We have the specimen at the castle. King Rayon was stupid for handing him over, Emperor Tulda commented in English.
Specimen? I whispered. Who's King Rayon?
The Najorian king, Zamire responded, his eyes going hard. What's wrong with these men?
I don't know, I whispered, my instincts telling me to run.
A fourth man joined the third. He was tall, pale, and had patches of blonde hair on his head. Unlike the other men, he carried an enormous cudgel. He swung at my barrier, which thankfully held. Okay, I was obviously not liking what was going on. If the lady wants to watch, let her, Emperor Tulda said, a smirk on his face. Just to let you know, Jade, I like a silent audience. What the hell was happening? I turned to Zamire, whose face suddenly filled with panic. He doubled over, his body shaking. I gently put my hand on his shoulder and he groaned. Power ran up my arm and began spreading. It felt like my insides were being warmed by a space heater. The heat felt uncomfortable, and I wanted to pull back. But the longer I touched Zamire, the less he shook. He straightened, his eyes holding dread. "I don't think I can stay long," he whispered to me. Crap. Before I could say a word, a red flyer suddenly uncloaked, feet away from the 4 men. A 5th man exited, hefting a crate. Zamire tugged on my arm. "We've got to get out of here," he pleaded. I wanted to run, but something about this didn't feel right. "Prince Eleron, bring up our first specimen," Emperor Tulda ordered. Specimen? What in the hell was going on? The tall man with the nearly bald head ran toward the gorge and shouted, "First up!" Moments later, a girl with long red hair appeared, her brows knit in confusion. "Maywood? What's going on?" she wondered. The blonde with patchy hair patted her shoulder. "Dear Maven, don't you worry. Emperor Tulda and his brilliant scientists are here to give you a vaccine to prevent you from catching my ailment," he assured. The woman eyed Emperor Tulda with wide, shocked eyes. She curtsied, and the blonde led her to the man standing with the crate at his feet. The lid was lifted from the crate. "Drink every drop," Emperor Tulda ordered. I wanted to say something to this woman, but Zamire covered my mouth. The woman turned to face me with a glass vial in her grip. The liquid was pink and fizzy. She uncapped the vial and drank the liquid like a shot. Without warning, she collapsed to the ground and Emperor Tulda lifted her easily and tossed her into the flyer. "I think 2 at a time will be the safer option, Prince Eleron. Our other self still has to inject them with the nano," Emperor Tulda said to the blonde. I was confused since the villager used another name to address that man. "Prince Eleron, perhaps we should come up with nicknames for one another. After all, we share the same name," the blonde complained. "Indeed," Emperor Tulda said. "Now bring in the next person." It took nearly 3 hours for Emperor Tulda and his partners to finish the task. Every time a flyer was full, one would appear to take its place. When the last villager disappeared, the Emperor turned to face me. "Can you do me a favor, Prince Zamire?" the Emperor inquired. "Emperor, what do you ask of me?" Zamire said. Unlike me, he remained standing for the entire spectacle. "Tell my sister that we march on Neretha tomorrow. With my enhanced army, we'll take your kingdom in ours. She'll be my regent," he said. Then he strolled into the flyer with his goons, and it vanished. Zamire shook his head. "Soldiers. There were women and children in those flyers," he said. "I'm thinking that Emperor Tulda doesn't care about children fighting. He's only interested in having more bodies on Neretha," I warned. I had no love for the laws and oppression on Neretha, but didn't want the country to be destroyed by a vicious army. "You need to figure out how we can get back to Neretha," I said. "None of the spaceships on Janton are hackable. Their security systems use biometrics. There has to be another way. Can't your father send us a ride?" I asked, hoping it was as easy as making a phone call. "Princess Shala wouldn't let me near a communications device so I can send an e-missive. She isn't stupid," Zamire reasoned. "So what? Are we going to let the mad emperor destroy Neretha?" I asked. A haunted expression crossed Zamire's face. "That shell you saw wasn't Emperor Tulda. I've seen people like him before," he admitted. "People?" I asked, horrified. "The Emperor's body is still alive, but his mind is no longer his own. He's..." Prince Zamire vanished before he could say any more. I wanted to yell in frustration. Seriously, the man was just about to clue me in to one of his suspicions. Instead, I eyed the supplies that Zamire gave me. Fresh meat, another water canteen, bread, and a pastry. I decided to eat the pastry first, since it looked delicious. I was about to take my first bite when Luke teleported beside me. Chapter 23. Jade. Janton. Destination unknown. I dropped the pastry to the snow, horror making my heart nearly pound out of my chest. Oh crap. I was screwed. Luke looked surprised to see me. He eyed my gear and shook his head. Thieves are usually punished with a hanging, he warned. I didn't steal this, I protested. Luke rubbed his brow. You want me to believe that Vector Village gave you the supplies freely? He demanded. Not them. Zamire, I clarified. The princess's consort is openly helping you? And tell me, Jade, why hasn't a Draugul been after you? I swallowed the dread and focused on the conversation. I think she knows I'm alive. The Emperor, Ellerin, You need to help me, I pleaded. Luke frowned. Help you how? The Emperor kidnapped all of the villagers, even the children. He had men with him that had milky eyes and... Luke shook his head. Emperor Tulda is an honorable man. In fact, he's set to visit our village soon. I came here to see if anyone in the Vector village got the same e-missive. They did, and it didn't go well. You need to warn your people, Tia appeared beside me, her knife flying before I could say a word. It slammed into my shoulder, my body being battered by horrid pain. Nausea filled me, and my body wanted to collapse onto the snow, but I refused to fall. If Tia wanted me dead, I wasn't about to make it easy for her. I lifted my right hand and wanted to blast her. Instead, Luke stepped in front of the witch. Tia, stop! Something's wrong, Luke shouted, as if his woman was miles away. Yes, she's still alive, Tia hissed. No. Doesn't it seem rather quiet out here? You're right. I don't see a Draugul in sight, she complained. No, Luke cried. The Vector village is empty. Don't you think that's weird? Tia let out a breath. The Emperor took them, I said in a shaky tone. It hurt to talk through the pain. Why would he do such a thing? The villagers are his people. If only Tia hadn't barged in on our conversation, things would have progressed further. The villagers were ordered to drink a pink liquid. Then they were put onto a flyer that transported them to a black warship. That's all I know, I said. Tia suddenly appeared in front of me, her face radiating anger. Oh, great. She thought that I was lying. She quickly pulled her knife from my shoulder, and I passed out from the pain. A hard landing made my eyes fly open. I blinked furiously, trying to figure out where I was. My charm was still in place, since the cold wasn't giving me frostbite. A growl told me that my stomach badly wanted food. A sharp twinge in my shoulder made me groan. Right, that no-good Najorian woman stabbed me. Anger gave me the willpower to sit up. Every inch of my body was in pain. A hand rested on my forehead. She has a fever, Luke, Tia's hard voice reported. Let's just leave her here. I'm tired of carrying her. You were the one that stabbed her, Luke snapped. Have a heart, Tia. We can't just leave her in the snow, especially if what she says is true. We'll need her to prevent our people from being taken. Tia laughed. You can't believe that, Luke. She's lying to stay alive. I say we toss her into a Draugul cave and go home. Where in the hell was I? It took forever to sit up and assess what surrounded me. We were on a snow-covered path surrounded by bare trees. Luke and Tia were facing one another, uninterested in me. Getting to my feet sent pain through the wound that was wrapped with a thick bandage. I slowly turned in the opposite direction and began walking. Having no supplies was inconsequential. Despite Luke's warnings, I would snatch what I could. I needed to find my way back to Princess Shala so Zamire and I could escape this ice prison. Soon, I made headway, Luke and Tia's voices slowly fading. It wasn't like the pair would help me on my endeavor. Luke was reasonable, but didn't have the ability to stand up to his suffocating wife. "Where do you think you're going?" Tia hissed. She appeared right in front of me, and I let out a startled scream. I stepped backwards, my back slamming into a warm chest. "We came to an agreement. You're our prisoner, and our leader, Carlo, will decide what to do with you," she explained. The smirk on her face announced that Carlo would probably murder me. Great. Why couldn't one of my abilities be to teleport? For once, could I do something useful? I felt a horrid burning sensation in my stomach that doubled me over. I groaned and tried to prevent the sensation from pulling me apart. Moments later, the pain was gone and I was able to breathe again. "You're not going to puke on my shoes, are you?" "No," I said. "Now let's go. We have to warn your village." We continued walking, with Tia taking the lead and Luke following behind me. As we walked, the weak sun slowly slipped behind the full moon. The path lasted for a mile, then a gorge became visible. Great. This was when some man who'd rather see me dead was going to decide my fate. I needed to come up with a plan. I needed to... A horrid trumpet sliced through the quiet air, making my heart stop. "It's too late!" I cried. Tia vanished and Luke followed. I didn't need to see what was going to occur. In fact, it would do me good to stay out of sight. The crazy emperor may not want an audience the second time around. I leaned against a boulder as a piercing scream reached me, even over the sound of the trumpet. Crap. Should I stay hidden or try to rescue these people? I stepped off the path to see what I least expected. A drow ghoul was across the hole from me, spitting fire from its mouth. An unhappy Emperor Tulda stood there, his milky eyes hidden by dark shades. He was surrounded by armored guards, each of them holding a red rod. Tia gestured at the drow ghoul with frantic hands, shrieking her displeasure. Ugh, why didn't she just get out of the way? I was about to step forward when one of the guards pointed a rod at the creature and fired. The creature crumpled into ashes, some of the black powder spraying down on the gorge. Great. Someone clued Princess Shala to the fact that I was alive. What to do now? "Enough screaming, specimen!" the Emperor snapped as soon as the horrid trumpet sound vanished. A tall man wearing furry leggings and no shirt climbed out of the gorge, his expression hard. He walked over to the Emperor and bowed. "None of that, Carlo. I'm here for a different purpose," the Emperor said. "We tried to kill Jade, Emperor. We swear it. The princess's consort is working to keep her alive," Tia graciously explained. "That witch turned on me. I wanted to toss a ball at her head, but I refrained." "An Ajorian. You lot are usually hard to catch. I wonder..." Emperor Tulda shook his head. "Enough of that. I need you and your villagers to take a serum that protects you against a terrible disease," he announced. "Is everyone assembled in a line like I ordered?" I wanted to toss a fat "I told you so" to Tia. Instead, I considered my options. On one hand, this was good news for Zamire. Emperor Tulda needed to acquire his soldiers before he rained carnage on Neretha. But the bigger the army, the more difficult it would be for the king to defend his country. "Of course, Emperor. Thank you for your benevolence," Carlo said. "Carlo, you can't just sign us up to take a mysterious serum," she cried. "Silence," Emperor Tulda ordered. I knew that I couldn't do anything to save the village. Even if I spread the message to another village, how could they avoid Emperor Tulda? The best option was for Zamire to appeal to Princess Shala. Perhaps she could find a way to reason with her brother. I turned my back on the village and walked the way I came. It would be smart to pillage an empty village for supplies. Then I'd search for a way to get back to the castle. It was like the plan caused my body to fill with energy. I sped up, my legs easily carrying me down the path. I was about half a mile away when a horrid shock wave slammed into the ground, sending me flying. My body crashed into the snow, causing my face to slam into the snow. Screaming followed the horrid noise, and I debated not getting up. After Tia tossed me under the bus, why should I risk myself to save her? But damn it, I couldn't just leave someone when they were in trouble. I shakily got to my feet and ran back to the village. Chapter 24. Jade. Janton. Ishmar Village. My legs obeyed, allowing me to run into the battle. Luke and Tia were attempting to attack Emperor Tulda. The problem? Well, 30 of his soldiers were standing between them. Women, men, and children held weapons on the teleporting couple. I was fortunate enough to be off to the side, neither party concerned with me. It was obvious to me that all the pair were doing was delaying the inevitable. Emperor Tulda would get his way. The man who ran the village was nowhere to be seen, which meant that he'd drunk the serum and was taken away. It didn't seem like any of the villagers were willing to join the fight. But I didn't think that they would remain immobile. What to do? Tia shouted in pain as a red laser beam slammed into her stomach. She fell to the ground, making herself an easy target. A toddler walked up to her and pointed a rod at the woman's head. I raised my hand and shot a ball of light at the toddler, smacking the little girl in the shoulder. It was enough to make her step back. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I ran at the battle, waving a hand at all of the laser fire, wanting my magic to make them harmless. The beams landed uselessly to the snow, allowing me to reach Tia. Blood covered her stomach. Her face was drained of color. "Luke!" I shouted. Thankfully, he teleported beside me, and I erected a barrier to cover us. "Darling Jade, it's nice to see you again. You wouldn't dare to interfere with Janton business, would you?" Emperor Tulda asked. I shook my head, then turned to face Luke. "We need to get out of here," I said. "No, Carlo, he's..." "Your leader is now one of the Emperor's soldiers. There is nothing you can do about it," I snapped. "I'm getting out of here. Are you coming?" I was being unfair, but part of me was annoyed that the couple refused to heed my warnings. "Luke!" Tia cried. Luke scooted down and brushed his wife's cheek. "Hang on, baby. Your wound is closing," he assured his wife as the soldiers began descending the stairs down to the gorge. Thanks to Tia and Luke's intervention, they were going to try a different approach. Moments later, 10 soldiers appeared carrying the unconscious forms of villagers. I eyed a baby in the arms of one child and left the barrier, intending to save the infant. "Emperor Tulda! War is no place for an infant!" I cried, pointing to the swaddled baby. "Aren't you marked for death, darling Jade?" the Emperor demanded. "Let me take the baby," I decided to say. The Emperor nodded. "Since you stopped the specimen from revolting, I'll do you this one favor. You're a lot easier to handle than your sister. She dared to blow up one of my labs," Emperor Tulda complained, his eyes hard. "I would kidnap you, but your power is too unpredictable. I need to build a special facility for specimen like you and your sister." Crap. What in the world was this man talking about? I had many siblings, but only one was able to create the magic I could. "Gwen," I rasped out. "That's her name," he confirmed. "Since Prince Ellerin was callously murdered, I no longer have eyes and ears in that lab. Not to worry, though. Another Prince Ellerin will be sent to replace him.
What in the hell was Emperor Tulda talking about?
In the meantime, you will take a flyer back to my castle and will be treated with respect.
The infant? I asked.
The infant will not join my army. I have a nursery for infants. Will going to the castle be amenable to you? I desperately need to replace the loss of Gwen.
Was Gwen dead, or had she found a way to escape the lab? Becoming a specimen wasn't something that I wanted to do, but if I attacked these innocent people and managed to kill someone, that would haunt me forever. I knew that something in the serum adapted their behavior. I just wasn't sure how it all worked. Maybe if we could find a way to disable the serum, it could save lives on both sides. With my new plan in mind, I eyed the couple in my barrier.
Are they coming with me? I asked. Indeed. I don't like your father's torture methods, but Prince Ellerin on Neretha learned that bonds can be used as leverage, he explained.
I was more confused than I was when our conversation started.
Some of his men called him Ellerin, but there was a Prince Ellerin on another planet?
A flyer uncloaked above me.
Either your friends go with you, or they will be broken down for parts, Emperor Tulda threatened.
I nodded and walked over to the barrier. I entered it and eyed a frustrated Luke.
Did you save the baby? He asked.
The baby is apparently going to a nursery. The Emperor wants us to go to the castle. It's either go with me, or you'll be broken down for parts. And our people? Tia demanded. I knew that the headstrong Najorian woman would take exception to my next words, but this was the best bargain I could strike. Sorry, Tia. The Emperor will take them. Tia got to her feet and swung at me. I ducked out of the way of her punch, annoyed that she was still trying to attack me.
Tia, it's the best Jade could do, Luke told his wife.
I was so close to winning that fight! Then you intervened! Tia shouted. You were close to dying, I snapped. Now would you rather be parts in some lab or in the castle with me? I stepped close to the woman and lowered my voice. I want to see if there is an antidote to the serum hidden somewhere. I could use your help. Tia nodded. Fine. But if we fail, I'll kill you, she snapped. I rolled my eyes and tapped Tia on the shoulder and was abruptly sent to another place. A tall man with raven-colored hair and light brown eyes paced an empty stone room. He was dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, goosebumps forming on his arms. He had a bruised cheek and his lip was puffy. He frowned at the black bracelets on his wrists. The door opened and Princess Shala entered, carrying a tray. I have no idea why you're still alive, but my brother probably has a grand plan for you, she explained before handing him the tray. Is there any heat in this castle? The man who spoke with an American accent asked. Princess Shala laughed. It's as hot as I can stand it, Najorian. If you want heat, maybe you should have upset King Relics. Then you would be sweating in his dungeon. At least you get to stay in an actual room. We have no dungeons on Janton. He nodded and shakily took the tray, which held a large bowl of stew. You should just let me go, the man hopefully said. The princess rolled her eyes. I've sent 5 e-missives to my brother. My consort is spreading a filthy rumor about him. I want to confirm that he's lying so I can cut out his tongue, she explained. Makes sense, the man said before Tia entered the room dressed in a robe. So Paint Boy gets food and I don't? Tia complained. Princess Shala glared at Tia. I don't feed liars. I don't care what you both say. There is no way my brother is working with a fictional prince, she insisted. Glad I cut off Jade's head when she tried to spout her lies. I can't trust whores. What the hell? I tried to understand what happened,
but nothing was making sense. 1 minute I was in the snowy clearing, the next I was in the castle with Princess Shala, Tia, and a complete stranger. I shook myself and gasped out in surprise when I realized that I was buckled into a flyer. "Thanks for waking up," Tia huffed. I glanced at her and discovered the woman strapped in the seat beside me. "Where are we?" I asked, my throat scratchy. "Where do you think you are?" "You're on the way to Emperor Tulda's castle," she snapped. "Who's Paint Boy?" I asked, trying to figure out if one of their conversations bled into my dream. I must have passed out. Was Luke making fun of a guy he knew on Earth? Yes, that was it. "Angelo Diger? Why do you care about him?" Luke asked from the seat behind me, confirming my suspicions. "Because you guys talked about him. It bled into my dream," I explained. "I must have been tired. I fell right asleep." I yawned, not wanting to return to that specific nightmare. "No one talked about Paint Boy," Tia refuted. "All I did was complain about how you tell us to surrender, then you pass out. Your wrist glowed too. It was startling. I dreamed that Princess Shala didn't believe us, so she chopped my head off as punishment for spreading lies," I explained. Tia shot me a thankful expression. "And how did Paint Boy fall into this? He's a Najorian embarrassment that lives on Earth." To humor Tia, I explained the entirety of the dream. Luke chuckled. "You would piss off Princess Shala." Tia bit her lip, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Maybe you have a point. Princess Shala isn't going to up and believe us. Luke and I didn't even believe you until we saw it for ourselves," Tia said. "It was just a dream," I assured Tia, but my instincts told me that Tia's concerns were valid. "Why would Princess Shala believe us?" "On Earth, we have means of filming stuff." "Is that the same on Janton?" I asked. "We have tablets that can film things," Tia confirmed. "Well, then one of you need to teleport out of the flyer and capture the scene," I suggested. After I made the suggestion, sleep claimed me once again.
Chapter 25. Sheena. Earth. The Gemini Compound. I stumbled out of the massage room, shock and panic roaring for attention. Jade was on Janton, stuck in a frozen tundra with Prince Zamire, the Crown Prince of Neretha. From what I gathered, they were into each other. But the biggest shock, Jade's wrist was branded with an ancient captor mark. When I was 11, Julia explained that our people used to be ruled by a royal. After the mark appeared on the royal, there would be some sort of ceremony. It was during this lavish event where 12 champions would be marked. These men and women served as the royal's enforcers. My mother lamented that through breeding with humans, the magic of casters was so diluted that no one manifested the mark of complete power anymore. And yet, my best friend Jade wore the mark on her wrist and was clueless about what it symbolized. "You got something?" Derek mentally asked me. "Yes, you can read away," I mentally told Derek. Amber was in the hallway, glowing from her facial. "Are you ready for your facial?" Amber asked. "I saw something," I quietly told her. My friend's eyes lit up, making my stomach twist. The ever-so-annoying Mandy teleported beside us, her eyes filled with excitement. "Sheena, you're going to love your facial. Amber, you look great! You— Shut up! I snapped. "I'm trying to figure out a caster thing, and Amber has the answers." "What caster thing?" Amber asked. "Remember the mark of the caster warriors from when we had the war with the Olympians?" I asked. "Yeah, the circle and an arrow connected by a sword. Why do you bring it up?" "Jade has the mark. I saw it," I warned. Amber let out an excited whoop and began doing a celebration dance. "That's great! That means that she'll be able to lead our people once she returns to Earth," Amber cried. We haven't had a royal in thousands of years. That would be good and dandy if she wasn't on Janton, I said, bursting Amber's bubble. Janton? I thought she was on Naretha, Amber squeaked. From what I gathered, Princess Shala wasn't too happy when Jade got too friendly with Prince Zamire, I explained. Damn. She can't be with an alien. She's our queen. The guild would never allow that, Amber protested. So, your friend is stuck on Janton, but she's important to the casters? Mandy asked, a frown on her face. Exactly. That means Mom needs to launch a rescue. We can't leave Jade there, Amber insisted. Your people have ships? Mandy asked, confused. Damn. The answer would be a big fat no. Winston's ship was currently being borrowed by Cordell, who could probably scoop up Jade if he wanted to. Rose. She would make that happen for us. Derek, I mentally called. I heard your thought, sweetheart. I'll mentally communicate with her. I don't see how you guys can do anything about this, Mandy chimed in. I mean, you're stuck here, and you aren't allowed to have communications devices because you can't be trusted. Before I could tell Mandy to stick a sock in her pie hole, my least favorite person teleported into the hallway. The more I saw her, the more I wanted to punch her in the face. Mandy, the commander needs you. I'm to watch over the humans, Mira reported. Mandy shot us a worried look and vanished. Mira shot a scowl in my direction. Let's get the hell out of here. I'd rather babysit you from your quarters, she decided. I couldn't care less about a facial, so I actually followed Mira out of the salon and picked up the bags of clothes that the receptionist was guarding for us. I carried my bag into the freight elevator and up the 2 flights of stairs. Mira didn't say a word until we were locked in the apartment that she used to share with Derek. What's the plan? She whispered. Amber gaped at her. Plan? I shrieked. You were the one that got us into this mess. Mira shook her head. Rose accidentally revealed our plan to the king. She had no idea I was talking to him on my tablet when she started blabbing. He found out about Sheena's vision and waited until Emperor Tulda contacted him to decide what to do. He told me that I had 2 choices. I could either dump all of you on Janton or bring you to the Gemini compound. Since Rose got us into this mess, I asked for her opinion. She confessed that Lena told her that something like this would happen. This was the lesser of 2 evils, Mira explained. Who in the hell is Lena? Amber demanded. Jade's twin. She's a caster that has visions. Not sure how it works, but Rose trusts her. Remember, she was the one that told Rose that we would come for her at the Kigor port, Mira said. How do I know that you aren't a double agent? I demanded. Mira shot me an impatient glare. Why would I betray my best friend? And think about it, Sheena. Don't you think that it's oddly fortunate that Cordell is headed to Janton, Angelo is on Janton, and so is your best friend? Mira did have a point, but Principal told me not to trust her. She should have come to us. If I told you that my plan was to trap you at the Gemini compound, you never would have gone for it. The soulmate-stealing hussy did have a point. Amber groaned. Where in the hell is Derek when we need him? He could read her mind and confirm that it's true. Mira shook her head. Derek's mind is being guarded by Mandy. You can't trust her. She's desperate to stay on the king's good side. My vision, I cried, wasn't important. All you saw was that your friend, the Queen of Casters, seduced some prince on some far-off planet. The king isn't going to care about that, Mira said dismissively. I wasn't sure what to think of Mira and how she went about things. Besides, at least in this compound, you both can train with the best. Lena told Rose that a war was coming. You need to be prepared to rescue Jade from her father. But she's on Janton, I cried. Listen,
I don't have visions. Jade's twin makes no sense to me, but Rose seems to trust her.
Rose? The woman with terrible judgment? I questioned. The door flew open and Mandy walked in, followed by 4 guards. Hey guys, King Rayon wanted a couple of guards to stay with you. He doesn't want you getting into any trouble, she said. So you snitched on me, then? I accused. I was just doing my job, Sheena. He's worried that you'll try to escape this compound, Mandy said. Mira frowned. I need to go check on something. I'll be right back, she said before leaving the room. I eyed Amber, who was ready to beat someone up. If we can't go anywhere, why is the king so worried? Amber wondered. Mandy chuckled. He just doesn't want you causing trouble. The last thing he needs is for you to cause a disruption. So you'll be guarding us for the rest of our lives? I challenged. It won't be that long in the scheme of things. Najorian can live for hundreds of years. I heard that the human lifespan is, 100 years, if you're lucky? So Derek and Winston will live hundreds of years without us? Amber asked, confused. No, they will die when you do. It's the blessing of the bond. You both will enter the afterlife together, Mandy brightly explained. 60 years of happiness versus hundreds of years of madness? I would have welcomed Derek and Winston's fates if I were them. I suddenly couldn't breathe. Though I was only 18, I felt my time on Earth ticking away, like it would end tomorrow. I rushed into the room Derek and I shared and tossed myself on the bed, grief and confusion causing tears to fall. I cried for the choices that were stripped from me, for the feelings I had for Derek. I allowed myself to break down over the fact that chemistry was to blame for the dissolution of Derek's marriage. I cried for Jade, our queen lost in space. I cried until it hurt too much to allow the tears to keep on falling. Then I sat up and shook my head. What in the hell was I supposed to do?
You're crying already? I haven't even started with you, a grumpy voice said. I blinked furiously and eyed Tormund, who was standing there in cargo pants and a t-shirt. Tormund? I asked, sniffling. Mira would like me to train you and Amber. Get out of bed and get dressed. I expect you to be in the living room in 5 minutes. Chapter 26. Sheena. Earth. The Gemini compound. I hobbled into the living room, my strength gone. Whatever training Angelo's uncle thought we would do today wouldn't be effective. My body could barely carry me over to him. Amber was standing beside Tormund, scowling at an agitated Mandy. Tormund, if you need something to do, you can take an extra shift in the detention center. Mandy's friendly threat annoyed me. After dropping the Derek's life will be short bomb on us, you expect Amber and I to just sit around here? I snapped. Where in the rules does it say that Tormund can't train us? Nowhere, it's just... I was supposed to keep you out of trouble. I don't think teaching you how to fight would... Amber darted forward and pinned Mandy without breaking a sweat. I already know how to fight. I'm a knight, she snapped, her eyes filled with hatred. Now shut up and let me spar with someone that can help me work off my anger. Unless you want me to take it out on you? Our additional security started laughing. Tormund rolled his eyes. Do you mind, Rawson? He asked. A tall, muscular man with a scar on his cheek stepped forward and plucked Amber off Mandy. As much as everyone would love to hit Mandy, it isn't allowed, he told Amber. A guard with chocolate brown skin whistled. I wish I'd gotten that on tape, he joked. I could report you for that, Amber. Do you want to spend the night in a detention cell? Mandy demanded. Amber's hand glowed so brightly that I covered my eyes and stepped back. Mandy swallowed. Let's just hit the gym, I suggested, not wanting my friend to blow up the place. Mandy cursed but nodded, and Amber's light vanished.
I will be telling the king about your attitude, Rawson. I chose the mate I was in love with. You can't hold Elias's reaction against me, she huffed. Huh? There was definitely a sordid story in Mandy's not-so-distant past. Once I had the courage to talk to Derek, I'd ask him. Thankfully, the gym was located on the same floor as our suite. It was spacious, with sections holding cardio machines, weights, punching bags, mats, and an indoor track. Tormund eyed us with a skeptical expression. He looked so much like Angelo that it hurt. I missed my friend, the culinary genius with a heart of gold. Mira may have been following the lead of an unknown oracle, but I didn't think that one of our friends should have been collateral damage.
Sheena, I think you should train with Rawson. He's one of the professors at the academy. He'll work better with a beginner,
Tormund decided.
Amber, you're with me.
Can the bag hold up against my punches? Amber asked. Some Najorians are gifted with super strength, so yes, Mandy hotly said. Rawson gestured to the track, which made my stomach drop. You can't be serious. I'm allergic to running, I complained. Rawson shook his head.
I need to see how fast you are,
he insisted. I nodded and walked over to the track, where Rawson led me through 15 torturous minutes of stretches. After stretching out my body, he ordered for me to run. I started out by jogging, which wasn't enough for Rawson the drill sergeant.
Faster,
he ordered. I forced my legs to go faster, sweat beginning to drip down my face. I huffed and puffed, my sides begging me to stop. By the time I ran 2 laps, I was about to quit for the day. But when I finished, Rawson shook his head.
Keep running.
I'm a fortune teller, not an athlete, I complained, eyeing Amber, who was happily punching the bag. Despite what Mandy said, that poor bag was shaking under my friend's punches. I reminded myself never to get into a fist fight with her. Mandy stood near Amber, her hands on her hips. It was obvious that Amber was trouble to her.
Go on, Sheena. To rescue Jade, you need to be faster than that.
Oh, crap. Rawson was right, but I wanted to argue with him. Anything to prolong the torture. I tamped down the instinct. Instead, I forced myself to continue running, my calves weeping from the exertion. Once I ran 8 laps, Rawson walked me over to the water station, where a smiling attendant gave me a cold glass of water. We sat on a bench while I greedily drank.
Have you lifted any weights before?
He asked. Julia bought me 20-pound dumbbells to use when she was convinced that I was going to be a knight after I ascended. Boy, was she wrong, I said, before finishing my glass. Rawson sighed.
Tell me more about your casters and who has which powers, he ordered.
A knight is strong and can blast people with deadly energy. A carver can carve their energy into anything they want. They are the charmers of our group. An oracle has visions, I listed. He nodded.
Your categories are holding you back. Maybe if you stopped thinking in the box, you'd be a lot better at working out,
Rawson suggested. I was too tired to consider his words. Instead, I followed him to the water station to drop off my glass, and we lifted weights. On the next day, the smell of bacon lured me out of bed, my body begging me not to move. 2 days of training told me one thing. I was glad I wasn't a knight. I rolled out of bed and noticed something. Derek's laundry was gone. That meant he was back. Crap. I wasn't ready to confront him about the whole shortened lifespan issue. The king had kept Derek and Winston occupied for 2 days. Probably a strategic move. If we weren't together, we wouldn't be able to scheme. Little did they know, our plan had little to do with escaping the compound. With nerves dancing in my stomach, I brushed my teeth and headed to the kitchen. Mandy was sitting on the couch beside Tormund. I waved at Amber's sparring partner and walked into the kitchen. Derek was at the table, sipping a mug of coffee. Seeing him made sadness creep over me. I actually started crying. Derek stood and rushed to me, his worried expression making my heart twist. He pulled me into his arms and I clung to him.
Sheena, did you see something?
He asked. I pulled away from him and forced myself to get it out. You should have said something about your shortened lifespan, Derek. Because of me, you're going to die. We can't bond. Derek held me close, his warmth making the tears come harder.
I'd rather enjoy my life with you than suffer madness. Besides, it's too late. Our bond formed the minute I felt your emotions, he said.
How fair is that? Why be stuck with a human when there are plenty of Najorians out there? This makes no sense. I can't believe that the universe is so cruel.
Why are you fighting against what is, sweetheart? Why not just be thankful for what you have?
I buried myself into his chest, treasuring the beating of his heart. He rubbed my back, his touch soothing me. But it didn't stop my whirling thoughts. There had to be a way for Derek to live longer. Could the guild help us? Did the useless king have an answer?
Our king isn't useless, Mandy shrieked. How dare you!
Derek stiffened. Then I felt a slight pressure in my head.
Stay out of Sheena's head, twin killer,
Derek snapped.
I'm not a twin killer. Just because I wasn't willing to accept both twins as my mates doesn't make me a bad person. I only love Cameron, Mandy cried.
You didn't try to stay loyal to Elias. After bonding with him, you thought that Cameron was the better offer. You insisted that you chose wrong and turned Cameron against his own twin.
Wait up. A girl swapped out one twin for another? What was wrong with her? Where is Elias? I asked.
Derek sighed. I've been trying to mentally reach out to him for almost 2 years. I think he's either dead or found a way to block me.
It's probably the latter, since Elias was a civilian, Mandy cut in. And everyone is blaming that on me.
Civilian? I asked.
Every Najorian with 2 gifts is required to join our military. If the Najorian can only teleport, they are civilians and will be assigned a career. Elias was a maintenance man.
That's sad, I said, coming to the conclusion that Elias wasn't coming back. Though something told me that there was hope for him. Derek kissed the top of my head.
You feeling better?
He asked. I guess, I grumbled. He led me to the table and pulled out my chair. I sat, and he placed a plate of bacon and toast in front of me.
I'm no Angelo, but the bacon did come out okay.
He burned the eggs, so he had to throw them out, Mandy butted in.
I wished that I could be assigned another guard. Instead, I ignored Mandy and thanked Derek for the effort he made. I took a bite of the slightly burned bacon and gobbled it up, along with the buttered toast. Then, Amber and Winston joined us, both of them looking determined.
The king wants us to meet with the queen in 10 minutes,
Winston announced.
Of course,
Derek responded. Yep, he also wasn't happy that we were being kept apart. I needed to find a way to fix that. If I was going to make an informed choice, I needed to spend more time with Derek.
Chapter 27. Jade. Janton. The castle. The flyer touched down on a platform that sat in the center of the snowy lawn. It was free of snow, and stairs were carved into the side. Tia glared at me, as if it were my fault that her destiny led to being the Emperor's prisoner. I felt both dread and elation. I was terrified to face Princess Shala again, since my very presence pissed her off. But Zamire, his warm lips on mine made my soul light up. I was becoming attached to the grumpy man with antiquated ideas, despite my better judgment. "Get out!" the pilot demanded. The side of the flyer vanished, letting in the wind. Tia slid out, followed by her husband. I thanked the driver before following the couple. It was a long way to the bottom for me, especially since my companions simply teleported themselves down. I was left to descend the hundreds of steps on barely stable legs. I clung to the railing, terrified that I would fall to my death. But I finally made it to the bottom, my body covered with sweat. Tia rolled her eyes.
That took forever. Come on, it's cold out here, she snapped.
We walked up the castle steps and stepped outside the large double doors. I walked over and began knocking. A minute later, the doors swung inwards and a scowling princess was standing in front of me, dressed in a linen dress and a fur cape.
What are you doing back? She demanded.
The Emperor sent me back, I said.
You stole his personal flyer, she accused.
No. We have proof of what's going on, I blurted out, recalling my dream.
Proof? That's interesting. All your lover brought back to me was a bunch of lies. Tell me, Jade, what kind of proof do you have?
Tia stepped forward and handed the princess a tablet. She was pissed that I insisted that she would have to teleport to the village to film the goings-on. I trusted Luke more than her. That meant that I didn't feel comfortable being left alone with her. The princess glanced down at the tablet, her posture stiffening.
Is this all you got? Princess Shala demanded. I was also able to steal a couple of vials. Jade was thinking that we could figure out how to counteract the serum, Tia snitched.
Was she serious? I was hoping for a secret mission that didn't involve the princess. Tia handed her one of the vials, and she uncapped it and took a sniff. She capped it and shot me a thoughtful expression.
Jade, I want you to test this serum. I need to know what it does, Princess Shala insisted.
No, you should test it on a Janton. It could probably kill a human, I fired back, knowing that it would most likely fry me from the inside out. Princess Shala took a deep breath. Fine. I have a prisoner that I need information from. If it doesn't work, your prince loses a body part, she threatened.
Follow me.
Oh, great. My subconscious was correct after all. We followed Princess Shala into a plain yet cavernous castle. The walls were bare but clean, and animal skin rugs adorned the concrete floor. According to Princess Shala, if a Janton wanted comfort, they needed to hunt for it. I got a glimpse of the dining room, which was nothing more than a couple of scarred tables with wooden benches. It was obvious that Emperor Tulda would rather have a functional home than a beautiful one. At least the place smelled pleasant enough. We walked up a long, winding staircase, and Shala led us into a wide room with a couple of chairs and animal skin rugs on the floor. My heart nearly stopped when I made eye contact with the man from my dreams. He was shivering, goosebumps prominent on his tanned arms. I have no idea why you're still alive, but my brother has a grand plan for you. He can be creative, the princess said. I'll tell the kitchen staff to give you hot stew to heat your weak bones. In my dream, Shala was the one to hand Angelo the stew. My heart rate increased as I wondered what Angelo would say. Is there any heat in this castle? He asked, his accent clearly American. Princess Shala laughed. It's as hot as I can stand it, Najorian. If you want heat, maybe you should have upset King Relics. Then you would be sweating in his dungeon. At least you get to stay in an actual room. We have no dungeons on Janton. Relief filled his features. I can help with the heat, I said, shooting the prisoner a soft smile. I walked over to him and gently touched his arm. Jade, don't react. I'm Derek, one of Angelo's friends. As long as you're touching him, I can communicate with you, a stranger mentally told me. I gripped Angelo's wrist, trying to school my features. Hopefully, the princess thought I was having an issue with the charm. I don't have long. Angelo can help you and your friends escape. Stay close to him. Okay, I thought at the voice. I made eye contact with Angelo, who frowned at me. Great. That mental conversation was only for me. I smiled and considered something.
Angelo, I heard a rumor that you are friends with someone named Derek, I whispered.
He nodded, the awkward expression fading from his face. I quickly charmed his cuffs to heat his body, and he let out a relieved breath.
That took long enough,
Tia said. I turned to face the annoying Nigerian woman that fought me at every turn.
Maybe next time you can charm the object, I sweetly offered.
Princess Shala waved her hand.
I will drag in the prisoner now. If the vial does nothing to the prisoner, Jade, I will kill you, she said before storming out of the room.
Tia's hate-filled eyes fell on Angelo.
So we're stuck with Paint Boy. Great, she complained. Now we'll never survive this stupid ordeal.
So you had military training? I had no idea, Angelo sarcastically replied. I rubbed my forehead.
Why are you being so disrespectful to a complete stranger? I asked Tia. I told you. He's the laughingstock of our society. He got into the academy because his second gift is turning different colors,
Tia replied. Zamire strolled into the room in full winter gear and scowled when his eyes landed on me. Please let me know what your second gift is. Is it being hysterical? Zamire asked. I was so over the way he looked down on women.
Like a man can't be overdramatic, I snapped, storming up to him.
I poked him in the chest and he gently grasped my wrist. Jade, what's going on? He demanded. Aside from the fact that you think men are stronger than women?
Not much, I huffed.
Jade, when did I say that? I was just making an observation. I couldn't argue with his words, especially when dancing butterflies in my stomach distracted me. Our gazes connected and there wasn't a word spoken, since the chemistry bubbling between us said enough. Angelo walked over and gently touched Zamire's shoulder. You have Nigerian abilities, he told the prince. I need to teach you how to use them. I'm Nerethian, was Zamire's haughty reply. Did one of your ancestors mate with a Nigerian? Angelo questioned. It could have been centuries ago. You sure, soldier? Zamire asked. Yes. That's the first thing they train recruits to detect in the academy, Angelo explained. Zamire released his hold on my wrist, and I felt empty. Instead, I turned to Angelo. He teleports in spurts, I reported. Zamire made a noise that displayed his displeasure. Yes, Jade, trust every stranger that comes along, Zamire sarcastically told me.
He's trustworthy. I can feel it, I insisted.
Angelo grinned. I can see why Sheena is fighting so hard to save you, he told me. Sheena? She knows aliens exist? Does Lord Pe'erk know about her? Is she safe? I tossed out so many questions that Zamire shot me a "you're being hysterical" expression. Who's Sheena? Luke asked, his apologetic eyes landing on Angelo. My best friend, I replied. Tia snorted, and I was about to tell her off when Princess Shala entered the room, pulling an 8-foot-tall man on a chain. Angelo's horrified gaze told me that he knew the man. Cordell? What are you doing here? Angelo demanded. They took her, the Janton said in broken English. My Lina is gone. His Lina was probably added to Emperor Tulda's army, Tia guessed. Sit, Princess Shala ordered, and the man sat on the rug. Now, you need to try this vial that my brother is giving out to our people. I need to see what it does. Cordell made eye contact with Angelo, who sighed. Sorry, I have no idea what's in the vial. Cordell's friend was obviously filled with regret. Just show honor and drink. When Cordell took the vial from his horrid princess, my heart sank. Chapter 28. Jade, Janton. The castle. I winced when Cordell plopped to the carpet, unconscious. The princess eyed us with suspicion. It was obvious that she still didn't trust that her brother was insane. I eyed Zamire, whose nervous gaze was trained on the Janton prisoner. Before he teleported away, he was about to tell me something. I eyed Princess Shala, who still remained in the room. Damn, what would be a good reason to pull him aside? I racked my brain, but couldn't conceive of a way to speak alone. Zamire, It's Prince Zamire, he snapped in my direction, and pain sliced my chest. Though Princess Shala looked satisfied, Tia seemed downright joyful at the public slight. Angelo walked over to me, kindness in his eyes. Royals are very prickly about their titles, even if you're friends with them, he told me. Don't take any advice from Paint Boy, Tia warned. Did I personally do something to you? Angelo asked. Yes, you were born, Tia hissed. Now that was enough. I couldn't stand bullies and wouldn't allow someone so nice to be disrespected. You're one to talk. The reason why we're in this mess is because of you. Instead of teleporting to your village to see if I was lying, you threw a hissy fit. Then, when you saw I was right, you drew attention to us and tried to attack the Emperor. If it wasn't for me and my quick thinking, you would have been parts in a lab, I reprimanded. Angelo frowned. Parts in a lab? The soldier slowly asked, his eyes going wide. Yes, that's exactly what Emperor Tulda said, I replied, sweat coating my neck. What color were Emperor Tulda's eyes? Angelo confidently inquired. What does the color of my brother's eyes have anything to do with this conversation? Princess Shala demanded. Milky white, I rasped out. Mental clones, Angelo breathed out. No way. Those abominations were eradicated by the military might of 5 planets centuries ago, Tia protested. For someone that thought I was inept, you sure drew the wrong conclusion, Angelo quipped. Zamire nodded. I suspected something along those lines, but I need to talk to my father. He'll know for sure. Unfortunately for us, a weary Emperor Tulda strolled into the room, wearing aviators. Princess Shala eyed him with a thoughtful expression. Tully, why are you still wearing that contraption on your face? She demanded. The possible clone ignored his sister and walked over to Tia. He held his big palm out. You have something that belongs to me, Najorian, he said. Tulda, where is your wife? Shala demanded. I don't have a wife, Emperor Tulda replied. This can't be, the princess whispered. Go on, Najorian. Hand me the vial, the emperor ordered. The princess whistled, and a long sword appeared in her hand. The emperor didn't even glance at his sister. His hungry eyes were all for Tia. Give it back! You stole a prototype, he shouted. Prototype! We all shouted in unison. It was purple, Tia said. I took the right one. Angelo groaned. He tricked you. There's clearly no prototype. I was going to let out a denial until the Emperor dove for Tia at such a speed that none of us could do a thing. He grabbed Tia's cloak and yanked, part of it escaping in his hand. Then he tossed a knife right at her chest. I let out a scream. Angelo teleported away so fast that my eyes didn't register that he was suddenly on top of Tia, the knife floating an inch from his arm. The Emperor did one of those dreaded slow claps. A Najorian with telekinesis ended up on my planet. How was I so lucky? He wondered. You ordered my imprisonment, sir, Angelo said, his tone hard. What for? The Emperor inquired. For blowing up the Kigor port, Angelo replied. The crazed Emperor laughed and did the annoying slow clapping thing. Tulda, you were truly a madman. Ellerin was right to select you. Oh, Najorian specimen, you've gotten it all wrong. Chaos blew up the Kigor port to upset the greedy Nerethian lords. Your charges won't stick for long. Tears streamed down Princess Shala's face, her sword arm shaking. No, she whispered. Yes, the Emperor said, mocking his sister. Thank you so much for keeping all of my specimens safe, dear sister. I'm afraid you are no longer useful to Chaos. Your obsession with vanity won't suit my cause. I needed to think quickly. If Emperor Tulda killed Shala now, then the Janton government would be toppled. That meant vulnerable, innocent lives would be ripe for the picking. I stepped in front of Shala, my heart nearly cracking from fear. No, you don't want to kill her, Prince Ellerin. You want her for your army. She's a great warrior, I lied. Princess Shala let out a curse, but I ignored her. Her mind is strong. Chaos has been drugging the water supply for years. The serum is only the last step. It will wear off too quickly on her. You can create another serum with her help, I offered. Prince Ellerin shook his head. I already have a group of Janton in mind for that. Chaos has voted, and she must die, the clone shouted. Moments later, black-clad Janton soldiers charged us. Oh, crap! I eyed Princess Shala, who eyed the 10 vacant-eyed opponents with fear. I couldn't blame her. Most of the guards were middle-aged housewives clutching red rods, while the other 3 were teenage boys. He pulled a black box from his pocket and fiddled with it. Kill everyone except for that Najorian boy and the human girl, he ordered. It was apparent that Angelo and I could sit this fight out, if we were dishonorable enough. I almost wanted to back out and run in the other direction, but then my heart reminded me that I could never leave Zamire to fight these people alone. To no one's surprise, Tia and Luke teleported from the room, obviously not down to face battle with us. I eyed Angelo, wondering if he would do the same, but he teleported beside one of the women and snatched the rod straight out of her hand and shot a beam of light at Emperor Tulda. His skin sizzled for a moment, but then he burst out laughing. I'm immune to those rods, foolish Najorian, he taunted. One woman backflipped over me in an effort to get to the princess. I faced Shala and shot a ball of light at the woman's back, her body crumbling to dust. Guilt pounded into me at the sight of her remains, knowing that I just executed an innocent victim. But I had one objective. I needed to get the princess out of here. I eyed Zamire, who commandeered his own rod. He looked so pissed off at me that I swore his look could slice me in half. Seriously, it wasn't like I conjured up a mental clone that had a mentally controlled army. I ignored him and eyed the 8 brainwashed fighters with confusion, since they weren't making a move. But then I realized that I was in the way of getting to Shala, and Angelo was hanging on to Zamire. From what it looked like, Zamire was struggling to get away. That was odd. Angelo's tactic was working. The bones on the floor scraped the bottoms of my bare feet on my way to the princess. I held onto her arm, and Emperor Tulda sighed and took off his shades. His milky white gaze glanced in my direction. Then he snapped his fingers. You're right, Prince Ellerin. Fight to injure, not kill, Emperor Tulda said. Jade! Zamire shouted. His desperate cry made my gaze land on him, and then he vanished, Angelo going with him. Now it was down to the princess, me, 8 guards, and a crazy clone. What could go wrong?
Chapter 29. Sheena. Earth. The Gemini compound.
Lift your arms,
Rawson coached. I was about to fall on my butt, tired of punching and blocking. I don't think I can feel them anymore, I grumbled. and I still felt like I'd run a marathon whenever the end of my training drew close.
Rawson shot me a patient look. "One more time, and you can stop for the day," he said. I raised my hands, prepared to jab at my trainer, when an arrow of pain slammed into my forehead. Jade rested on a lab table, a tube in her arm. Her head was shaved bald, and she was missing one of her eyes. Emperor Tulda walked in, pushing a cart full of vials. He eyed Jade with a hopeful expression. "This better work," he said. "Drink up, Jade." She obediently sat up and sluggishly reached for the vial. She chugged it down, then began convulsing. The Emperor shook his head, disappointed in Jade's bad reaction. He didn't lift a finger as Jade continued to flop around on the table. When her body stopped moving, blood oozed out of her nose and mouth. "That was annoying. Now I have to find another specimen," the mad Emperor muttered in English. He rubbed his forehead, clearly stressed that his experiment failed to yield positive results. I was lying on the mat, a concerned Rawson sitting beside me. My headache was so intense that I swore my fingernails were sore. My entire body was sensitive, my skin feeling like it had been scrubbed too vigorously by a loofah. I tried to talk, but my dry mouth wouldn't let me produce any sound. "What happened, Sheena?"
"Water,"
I croaked out. This was my first time having a vision of the future, and it was taking a toll on my body. I sure hoped that I could do something to change that horrid outcome. Jade was the queen of casters, the figure that would finally unite the covens. I couldn't afford for anything to happen to her. Maybe she could change the stifling rules so I could be with Derek. I didn't want to give him up. Mandy walked over to us, followed by an annoyed Amber. Tormund wasn't able to spar with Amber, so she was subjected to Mandy's constant chatter and bossy nature. "I told you, Rawson. Sheena is only a human. She can't handle our training regiment," Mandy scolded. "Vision," I rasped out. Amber thankfully ran to the water station and came back with a glass of water. Rawson and Amber helped me sit up, and Amber held the glass to my mouth. I took a sip of the refreshing liquid, my throat grateful for the hydration. As soon as the glass was drained, I eyed Amber. I had a vision of the future. Jade ends up in a lab with Emperor Tulda experimenting on her. It was horrible. She lost an eye and... Two strangers, Derek and the king and queen, suddenly teleported into the training center. The couple was dressed in what looked like bearskin clothing. They were clearly exhausted and barely able to hold themselves up. Derek ran to me, his eyes widening when he got a whiff of what was in my mind. "In Sheena's vision, Emperor Tulda has milky eyes. Tia and Luke reported the same thing," Derek said. King Rayon let out a curse. "Clones? I thought we eradicated them 500 years ago," the king protested. "Clearly you didn't. Angelo is no liar, and Sheena's visions are accurate," Derek defended. The male stranger rubbed his face, clearly stressed out. "I get that none of you know us, but I can honestly say that Emperor Tulda has gone off the rails. Before we left, he was about to kill the crowned princess and the rest of us. He called Jade a specimen," the man I assumed was named Luke explained. "Jade? You know Jade?" I cried, my heart doing flips in my chest. "Unfortunately," the female stranger grumbled. "Oh, hell no! Did this broad want to get backhanded across the room? I would fight her if I had to. I would—" "Sheena, focus," Derek softly told me. His beautiful eyes drew me in, discouraging me from speaking violence against that cranky witch. Instead, I gently caressed his cheek. "Right. I'll fight her later." "How are we going to help Jade?" I asked. King Rayon rubbed his eyes. "We need to get King Relics involved. Earth is too far away from Janton for us to do anything," the the coward said. I shot a hostile expression at the king.
If you hadn't interfered, I would be on Janton right now, protecting my best friend. Now, I'm stuck in this stupid compound, unable to help, I shouted.
The horrified gasps didn't stop my mouth from moving.
From day one, you have been a coward. You're nothing more than a weak-minded king who won't do anything because you can't. You're going to let Janton burn. What about your people that live there? Can't they fight? I demanded.
The female covered her mouth while the blonde looked like he would have a heart attack. And you thought Jade was bad, Tia? At least she's nice, Luke quipped. King Rayon, I'm sorry for her disrespect, Derek said as he got to his feet. Sheena's latest vision has clouded her judgment.
That idiot.
I wasn't going to apologize to that coward. He needed to hear what I had to say.
A distant part of me knew that he was kissing the king's butt to keep me safe. Derek was kind, thoughtful, and supportive of me. He would help me if he could. Suddenly, emotions slammed into my gut, making it overwhelming to keep my eyes open. I forced myself to concentrate on the problem that made me so angry. I reached out to Derek, my intention on stopping him, when I heard a loud gasp, followed by agony. It was like my entire body was splitting apart. I tried to breathe, but I couldn't get in any air. My vision was covered by a blindfold of darkness. I couldn't even feel my fingers. If I could, maybe I could rub at my eyes. My entire body was nothing more than a block of pain. My sense of smell was the first thing that seemed to work. I smelled pumpkin-scented candles. My hearing picked up a battle cry. Frigid air hit my skin, then my feet landed on a hard surface. The blindfold vanished from my face, and I was suddenly in an unfamiliar room, surrounded by enemy soldiers. Jade threw a ball of light at Emperor Tulda, and he lifted his arm and absorbed it. Ellerin taught us a lesson when that half-breed sister of yours killed him. Chaos learns, adapts, and destroys, he shouted. Sheena, where did you go? Derek mentally asked me. Janton, I'm in the middle of a battle and I can't even move. I'm screwed, I mentally told Derek. I was just lucky that no one had noticed me yet. A 7-foot-tall woman wearing a black uniform charged me, a long rod in her hands. I dropped to the hard ground and rolled, my body nearly crashing into... Cordell? Cordell! I cried. Help me! The assassin roared and lumbered to his feet, a choker connected to a chain wrapped around his neck. He jumped in front of me and punched the female soldier in the head before stealing the rod from her. Then he pressed a button on the side and the female became nothing but ashes. Cordell, steal one of those weapons for me, I pleaded. He did my bidding without hesitation, knocking out another soldier, stealing me a weapon, and killing her with one blast. Cordell, protect Princess Shala, Jade cried. I frowned, not happy that my bestie just stole my bodyguard. But then a rod landed at my feet. Hell yeah. I ran to Jade, whose back was to me. A soldier charged me, her unfocused eyes giving me the creeps. I lifted the rod and pressed one of the buttons on the side. There were 3, so I supposed that I needed to use this Janton as practice. She also lifted her weapon, and I dove to the side, the week of training making me quicker. The beam meant for me ended up slamming against the floor. Okay then. Button number 1 does nothing. I pressed button number 2, and nothing happened. Button number 1 turned off your blaster, Derek mentally told me. You need to press it again. I pressed button number 1, then button number 2, and a blast slammed against the woman's calf, causing her to bellow. Jade spun around and shot a bolt of light into the woman's chest, and she exploded into ash. I got myself to my feet and smiled at my exhausted-looking friend. Wicked. What's the plan for getting us out of here? I wondered. Jade shook her head. You always get yourself into these messes, Sheena. I wanted to hug her,
But then Cordell let out a roar and killed the last of the army guys. The Emperor took off, obviously knowing that he was outgunned. "The clone is getting away!" I cried, my intentions on following the psycho. "If you follow him, it will probably lead to his brainwashed army," Derek sternly told me. "Why didn't you come after me?" I demanded. "I'm trying. The king you insulted won't remove the block he put on me," he mentally told me. "Tell the king I had a vision. Tell him that if Winston, Amber, and you don't go to Janton, his people will fall." This was a lie, and oracles should always speak nothing but the truth. But I needed my friends here with me. I felt guilty, but knew it needed to be done. I was too weak to teleport again, and Angelo was our only hope of getting out of this stupid mess. I eyed Jade, who looked like she would fall apart. Cordell hovered around the princess, his blank eyes making alarm bells ring in my mind. "What's wrong with Cordell?" I asked Jade. "Princess Shala made him test out a serum that Tia stole from the Emperor. I think it makes Janton more pliable to suggestion. I can't be sure." "If she did all that, why are we protecting her?" I asked, hungry to punch that psycho in the face. "Because she's the only ruler that Janton has, and Prince Ellerin knows it," she replied. Chapter 30. Jade. Janton. The castle. I watched as Angelo appeared with Prince Zamire and Amber. Amber shrieked and dove for me, her arms wide open. I smiled at the rambunctious girl and hugged her tightly. She pulled away and brushed my cheek. "We finally found you, Jade. I'm so sorry that Lord Perk took you. I'll make sure to behead the bastard myself," Amber proclaimed. I frowned when she gripped my left wrist and pointed to the symbols. She gently tapped the mark. "The circle means that you're an oracle. The sword represents the knights, and the spool of yarn represents carvers. I'm only a lowly knight. I think it's badass that you're all three." "I'm sorry. What?" Amber wasn't telling me that I was an oracle. The vision I had of this very room wasn't true. There was no way that my head would have been chopped off if I hadn't thought to bring the princess proof. "Yep," Amber said. Then she caused her hands to glow. "Only knights can do that. Sheena over there is an oracle. The proof is on her wrist." "And she never told me?" Hurt slammed into me at the thought that my very best friend wouldn't have included me in something like that. "Don't be hurt, bestie. I was ordered not to tell you," Sheena said as she approached. "I wanted to tell you so badly, but the guild doesn't allow humans to know about casters." "Casters?" I asked, confused. "Are we witches?" "We're casters. We don't need spell books to work our magic. And yes, our race is caster, and the marks decide what role we play," Sheena announced. "And you came to look for me?" I asked, the sadness being replaced by gratitude. "We went looking for you," a slim, stunning, dark-haired beauty interjected. Sheena scowled at her. "What are you doing here, Mira?" "Snitches don't belong on the mission," she huffed. "King's orders," Mira said, her eyes studying me. "So you're the queen Sheena's been desperate to save?" "Queen?" I asked. Sheena and Amber exchanged "oh crap" looks. "Yeah, babe. So it's like this. Since you have all three marks, you lead the casters," Sheena nervously explained. My head hurt, and all I needed to do was take a long nap. We'll worry about that later. What we need to do is get the hell out of here before more soldiers come to kill the princess, I pointed out. Angelo approached, the black cuffs missing from his wrists. "Jade, sorry for leaving you for so long. My goal was to take the prince out of here, then get to you. But Tia and Luke got to the king before I could," Angelo said. "I can't say I'm shocked that they abandoned us. And the nerve of Tia going on about how you were Paint Boy when you were the hero that brought us all together," I said, pulling Angelo into a warm embrace. Zamire glared at me. So you hug every man you meet? The prince huffed. Anger surged in me, and I stomped over to him, my eyes narrowing on his handsome face. You can't tell me what to do. Despite the fact you tried to have me join your harem, I'm not yours, I said, jabbing my finger into his chest. Zamire scowled. I tried to buy you to keep you out of trouble. Why are you being so dramatic?
Oh, so you didn't buy me because you wanted to be with me?
Hurt nearly shattered my heart. Zamire rubbed his face. I never know what the right thing to say to you is, Jade. If I say no, I don't want you, you'll throw one of your tantrums. If I say yes, you'll toss this women's rights notion in my face. I was about to tell him I was equally confused when he pressed a brief, rough kiss to my lips. We should discuss this later. Since you're correct, we need to get out of this castle.
He kissed me after admitting that he bought me to keep me safe.
Ugh, Zamire was infuriating. Why couldn't he say, I will talk to my father this instant to change some of Naretha's laws? That's what I truly wanted to hear. Sheena stepped over to us, her face filling with interest. Well, 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 what do we have here, Jade? She teased. An old-fashioned prince that still has a harem, Amber chimed in, her eyes holding displeasure. I'm too weak to teleport us to Earth. Cordell, was our ship compromised? Angelo asked. No. I had my brother beam me down to the surface, Cordell replied in a flat tone. We really needed to fix him. We need to go back to Naretha to warn the king about the clones, I said, eyeing Angelo. He sent me a reassuring look. We will. Don't worry, he softly said. Has anyone spoken to Jane and Tim? I asked, directing the question at Amber and Sheena. Angelo rested a hand on my shoulder. Jade, let us get back up to the ship so we can catch each other up, Angelo reminded me. I eyed a few unfamiliar faces and nodded. I'd ask about Jane and Tim later. Maybe Angelo could teleport me to them when it was all over. I'll accompany Jade, Zamire said, grabbing Angelo's other arm. He nodded, then a blast of power went through me, making it feel like my insides were being electrocuted. Then I was standing in a sitting room of sorts with rows of recliners. Angelo released us and vanished. I took Zamire's arm and stepped into the kitchen area, having the feeling that Angelo would need the room. Zamire, The game we're playing is foolish. I'm the Crown Prince of Naretha, and you're the queen of a race of people on Earth. I belong to Princess Shala, he listed. Oh, crap. Zamire was giving me the breakup speech, which was odd, since all we shared were a few kisses. Besides, I couldn't be with someone that believed that women didn't have a voice. I would be betraying all strong, powerful women everywhere. But I wanted him. My body screamed for me to pull him against me. I wanted to kiss him until our problems went away. But a truth slammed into me. I would never be happy on Naretha, because it wasn't my home. Once I helped his people, I'd go back to Earth and learn everything I could about the casters.
Am I interrupting something?
Sheena asked. Not at all, I said, walking over to my best friend, the person that risked her neck to go after me. I pulled her into a tight hug, squeezing her. Then I released her and brushed a kiss on her cheek. Thank you, Sheena, I said. But I'll understand if you don't want to go warn the Narethians with me. Your life is on Earth and... Sheena flipped me off.
Yeah, like I'd let you out of my sight after traveling the galaxy to find you, she snorted.
A man with brown hair approached, a nervous expression on his face. Are you going to introduce me, Sheena? He asked.
Oh yeah! Babe, this is my soulmate, Derek. I'm his compatible, the one person made for him. It's a Najorian thing. They can only be with the person made for them, or else they will go mad. But Derek didn't wait for me. Nope, he married Mira, that hot brunette. Don't worry, they divorced and now Derek is insistent on being with me, even though bonding to me will shorten his lifespan, Sheena babbled.
What a mess. I had no idea what to tell Sheena. Instead, I held out a hand to Derek. Nice to meet you. Thanks for finding me, I said. He smiled and took my hand. I shot Sheena a "we'll talk later" look. Derek and Sheena took their seats, and Amber approached with a handsome chocolate-skinned man.
This is my soulmate, Winston. No ex-wives,
Amber said. I smiled and shook Winston's hand. Empress Shala and Cordell chose to sit on the floor close to the wall. Angelo waved as he entered the room with Mira beside him. I was thankful for the distraction, since I was dying inside. I sat between Sheena and Amber, Zamire still leaning against the wall. I desperately wanted to forget about Zamire, so I latched onto a happy topic. So, did you reach out to Jane and Tim, Sheena? They must be worried, I said, smiling at the memory of the kind couple. I seriously needed to apologize to them once I got the chance. Everyone looked at one another, as if unsure about something. It was Derek who spoke. I'm so sorry, Jade. Lord Pe'erk had them killed, he said, and shock filled me. No, I told David that I would go willingly as long as he didn't hurt them. No, I can't. Amy told me that they were fine. She wouldn't lie to me, I protested. I'm sure this is a mistake. Sheena? Sheena covered her face, and that told me everything I needed to know. Jane and Tim were needlessly murdered. David? I questioned. No, Gwen's mother said as she entered the kitchen. She was wearing a long shirt with sweatpants. Gwen and David would do nothing to hurt people. They are good children.
Good kidnappers, Sheena snapped.
I couldn't blame Sheena for her attitude, but she had no clue how manipulative Lord Pe'erk was. So, who killed the Banes? I asked, the guilt suddenly seeping in through the numbness. No one had a choice, Jade. You know that, she pleaded. I would never kill someone without reason. I get that, I said, remembering the soldiers my magic carved its way through. But the Banes weren't part of this. They were innocent bystanders with the misfortune of opening up a home to me. So tell me, Sheena, who killed my parents?
Lex. From what I understand, he planted a bomb, Sheena replied.
Amy lied to me. Lex stood right in front of me, not an ounce of guilt on his face. That evil lord spoke to me, knowing that he blew up the only people who genuinely craved to know me. I couldn't even trust the sister I spent weeks with. Were Nina and Molly aware of my caretaker's fates? Did they know what carnage that evil lord left behind? Jade, not everyone is like you, Rose unhelpfully interjected. Think about it. If he threatened Nina's life, told you that if you didn't kill someone, Nina would be harmed, what would you have done? I would have found a way to kill him, I said, my tone steady. Had I been in my mother's shoes, I would have acted the same as her. I don't stand for injustice or unfairness. Sheena shot Derek an "I told you so" expression. Amber nodded in understanding. Amber, aside from killing my parents, why do you want Lord Pe'erk dead? I asked.
Because he also killed my bio dad. He was sending me fake letters, pretending to be him.
And he thinks that I'm joining his harem when I'm of age, she rasped out. I covered my mouth, nauseous at the thought that Father would impregnate Amber against her will. Everything was just a little too much for me. I stood up and wrung my hands. Is there a place where I could be alone? I just need a moment, I said. Angelo nodded and escorted me to one of the bedrooms. Chapter 31. Jade. In space. I tossed my filthy body on the plush carpet, my legs too weak to support the weight of grief I carried. Jane and Tim were gone. They were dead, and I never thanked them for how wonderful they were. Instead, I was careful, afraid that they would be as indifferent as my other foster parents had been. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Once we aided the Nerethians and we returned to Earth, what then? It wasn't like I could live with my foster parents. My home was gone. The people who attempted to give me a safe haven were murdered for it. Jade, Zamire whispered before kneeling on the carpet beside me. My heart was so fragile that I couldn't bear to face him. Zamire was the prince of a planet that robbed me of parents, freedom, and security. He would never be willing to change the laws to make me happy. Go away, Zamire, I whispered. I can't do this right now. He refused to listen to me. Instead, he lifted me into his arms and walked into the ensuite bathroom. He set me on my feet and I leaned against the wall. You're filthy. Angelo went to a spaceport to procure clothing for you, he informed me. Of course, me being clean would be your main concern, I huffed. Women should be presentable at all times. Women should also be obedient, Zamire reminded me. I flipped him the bird and he let out a chuckle. I ignored the warmth that filled my chest at hearing such a positive sound coming from him. Zamire ran the tap, allowing the tub to fill. I stared at the liquid, a part of me recognizing my need for a bath. I was caked with blood, dirt, and grime from my days on Janton. Zamire threw in a lavender-scented bath bomb and walked over to me. He untied my robe, and I let out a gasp of protest. I've seen every part of you before, Jade, he said. Right. Our hot tryst in the horrid holding room. He tossed my robe to the floor and caressed my face. Undo the spell on your body, Jade. You no longer need to remain heated, he reminded me. I allowed my powers to slip away and felt the warm air hit my skin. He lifted me into his arms and placed me in the tub. I sat there, my limbs not willing to move. Zamire shook his head and began washing my body. His touch was so soothing that my tired eyes closed. The next thing I knew, I was fast asleep.
Jade, are you awake?
Sheena quietly asked. I am now, I grumbled, forcing my aching eyes to open. I blinked until my eyes adjusted to the light. Sheena stood by my bed in a pink tank top and cut-off shorts. Where are we? I asked, my brain refusing to catch me up to speed.
We are flying toward Neretha,
she replied, and the grief and guilt pounded into me again. I groaned. Lord Pe'erk is going to pay for what he did to Jane and Tim. They were such nice people, I said, my throat aching.
He will, babe. So, do you want me to bring breakfast in here? Or do you want to eat with everyone?
I don't think I can see Zamire right now, I admitted. We can't be together, so what I'm feeling is pointless.
You and the nutty prince aren't working out?
Big surprise, Sheena snorted.
Wait a minute. He bathed and dressed you. You were good with that, right?
Yes, we aren't together because he's Princess Shala's consort, I clarified.
And you are too honorable to steal another woman's man?
Sheena guessed. I honestly don't know. Zamire's father made the match behind his back. He had no clue until Princess Shala kidnapped us before... Goodness, I need to kill the man I'm supposed to marry. His name is Gabar, and he's a jerk. I told my best friend about the horrid tournament and Lady Annelli's intentions. Hopefully, Karen and Nina are safe. My words must have cursed my sisters. I was shoved into a vision without warning. Nina paced her cabin, her eyes red-rimmed. She eyed the bed, which held a lifeless Gabar lying on it. He was blue, his lips swollen so badly that the skin cracked in some places. His hands resembled one of those blown-up hands that children loved playing with. There was a glass of red liquid on the bedside table, and a half-empty trunk rested by the bed. Nina stopped her pacing and removed articles of clothing and began packing them in the closet. There was a soft knock on the door, and Nina stiffened before taking a deep breath. She hung up the long gray shirt she was holding on a hanger and opened the door to reveal Karen on the other side. Nina pulled Karen into the room and closed the door.
Lady Rima, I need your help,
Nina squeaked. Karen eyed the bed and smirked. So it worked? She asked.
Yes, Sally didn't lie to you,
Nina confirmed.
I'm going to hang for this. Your husband is going to kill me.
Karen pulled Nina into a hug. It's okay, sweetheart. My husband only wants me to be happy. The stupid Nerethians believe that a content wife will conceive a child much faster. He only passed you off to Gabar to save face after Jade vanished.
Did they find her?
Nina asked. Not yet. From what Hope and Faith tell me, the king is doing everything to locate his son, Karen informed her.
Annelli, she said nothing?
Until her dying breath, that cow said nothing. All she said was that the prince got what he deserved, Karen said. Nina, I won't let you go down for this. I know that we were never close, but you can trust me. You're my sister.
Okay,
Nina whispered. Nina, I need to know. Did the herb work? Karen demanded.
Yes. He wasn't able to perform. Karen, what are we going to do? I killed someone.
He would have abused you until your dying day, Nina. Gabar isn't worth crying over, Karen said. Just trust me. A red beam split the wall beside the door in half. Karen's eyes grew wide as a Janton woman entered the room, a blaster rod in her grip. Nina ran from Karen's arms and raced to the nightstand. Karen ducked right before the woman fired her weapon. She dropped to the floor, the beam just missing her shoulder. The Janton soldier's eyes were focused on Karen, who stood to her full height. Nina let out a war cry and charged the woman at super speed. She tossed the contents of the glass into the woman's face, and the Janton woman's pale skin began to smoke. She dropped the rod to grip her face. Nina quickly scooped up the discarded weapon and frantically pressed the button, turning the woman to ash.
We need to get out of here, Karen,
Nina shouted. Karen gestured to the bed. Do it, she screamed. Nina aimed the blaster at the dead body and shot the weapon. The corpse and the bed were obliterated. Karen grabbed Nina's arm and they exited the room. I blinked furiously, a headache assaulting my temples. I wanted to throw up. We failed. It's too late. And I was the one who was supposed to tell everyone.
Chapter 32. Gwen. Neretha. The lab. You should wait here until Prince Ellerin arrives, a female lab assistant said in a bored tone. We stood outside, facing the smoldering remains of the lab. The sun was high in the sky, and the heat was leaching every ounce of strength from me. I pushed strands of my hair from my sticky forehead.
Gwen fried him, so we're free to go,
Lex said, his arm around his mother. Yvette's leg was still bleeding from the shrapnel from the explosion. Anna fared better, only suffering a few scrapes and bruises. The woman who stood in front of me was bleeding from a small cut on her forehead. It was amazing how, even with her injuries, she cared about the demands of a dead man. You specimens know nothing, the woman snapped.
Another prince will arrive to take Prince Ellerin's place. Lex lifted his mother into his arms and began running away from the lab without looking back. I couldn't fault him. Yvette was his #1 priority. I would have done the same. I eyed Anna, whose hands were shaking. "Gwen, you need to get out of here. He'll kill you," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. The lab assistant rolled her eyes. "With that amount of power running through her? I very much doubt it. Gwen will probably be conscripted into Chaos's army," the assistant said. "Anna, you are simply a vessel for his embryos." "Did he implant one in you?" I asked Anna. She nodded. "So you're pregnant?" I asked, fear making my stomach want to expel the very little that remained in my stomach. Like my mother, Anna was used for the womb she possessed. I wanted to scream and rage, but didn't do such a thing. We were stranded by the lab and had no allies to speak of. How was I supposed to help Anna when I couldn't even help myself? "Grab Anna's hand, my Gwen," Christian mentally ordered. I didn't question what he said. Maybe he was hoping that we could run hand in hand away from the terrors of the lab. I clutched Anna's hand tightly, the lab assistant's shoulders relaxing. It was obvious that she saw surrender when she looked at me. Of course she did. I was a tool, someone that people used to do their dirty work. That Janton was disobedient. Gwen will kill her. Yvette is barren. Gwen can take care of that mess. The thought that my power was going to be used to harm people caused grief to crack my frozen heart. No, I can't feel this emotion. It won't do me any good. I had to fight the influx of emotions that suddenly filled my body. "Close your eyes, Gwen." I closed my eyes, the tears falling to my cheeks. Anna squeezed my hand, her touch only making the sobs come harder. Because deep down, I knew I didn't deserve her kindness. How many times did I throw over members of the harem to protect my mother? Given the opportunity, I would have done the same to her. I was conditioned to act how Lord Petrick wanted me to. "Now!" Christian's loud command was followed by pain ripping through my body. I would have let out a scream, but my vocal cords were frozen. All I could feel was the sensation of every part of me being ripped apart by sharp jaws. It only lasted a second, but once the pain was gone, I felt weak. "Gwen," Anna cried, "where did you bring us?" The smell of mold hit my nose, the freezing air registering moments later. I opened my eyes and couldn't make out a thing. I created a small ball of energy which illuminated the atrocity in front of me. I stood on a walkway that separated 2 rows of rectangular boxes, each of which rested on a platform. Anna gripped my hand tightly, the fear evident on her face. I walked forward, my heart pulling me to a particular box. I stopped beside a worn box with a see-through lid. The platforms were only a foot high, so it was easy for me to peer in. The face that was looking back at me was beautiful. The well-built stranger had a peaches and cream complexion, full lips, ice blue eyes, and thick golden locks. He had scruff on his cheeks, and he wore one of the hospital gowns I was forced to wear in Prince Ellerin's lab. He was connected to wires. "My Gwen," Christian's voice said in my head, and I nearly fainted. The end. This has been Captive Prince, 1st Generation, Age of Chaos, Book 2. Written by Debbie Civil. Narrated by Camille Laakea Wong. Copyright 2022 by Debbie Civil. Production copyright by Debbie Civil.